Good evening and welcome to the November 9th, 2022 School Committee meeting. Our first item of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. Our first item of business is the MASS Academic Excellence Award announcement, and that will be presented by Dr. Brand.
Thank you, everyone, and good evening. Tonight, it's my privilege and pleasure to announce this year's winner of the 2022-2023 Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents Academic Excellence Award. This award is intended to be given to a senior high school student who has distinguished themselves in the pursuit of excellence during their high school career. The selection of this award is made in the fall, typically, of each year, allowing the awardee to include this honor in his or her credential package for those that are pursuing post-secondary plans following graduation. It is with pleasure at this point in time that I'd like to ask Ms. Mallory Brown to come forward. This is the awkward. Come on over here, Mallory. Why are you over here? Okay.
Spotlight.
Mallory is one of the top students here in her class of 2023 at the Wilmington High School and is an outstanding student, athlete, and leader who strives to make a difference in our community. Strong across the disciplines, Mallory has excelled in a rigorous honors and advanced placement curriculum. Since her freshman year, Mallory has impressed all of those who have had the pleasure to work with here at the high school with her intellect, originality of thought, and passion for learning. She serves as a peer mentor, a member of the National Honor Society, and captain of her cross-country team, and has participated in winter and spring track. Mallory is dedicated to helping others, evidenced by her work and volunteer activities throughout the Wilmington community. She coaches young athletes with disabilities through Beyond Tops and is a member of our Best Buddies Club. Upon graduation, Mallory plans to major in neuroscience, focusing on researching autism in children. Congratulations, Mallory, as the 2022-23 MASS Academic Excellence Award recipient.
Congratulations. Congratulations, Mallory. Congratulations, family. Thank you for joining us. All right, our next item of business, we have our middle school representatives are here to give us an update on the middle school. You want to come on down? We have Selena Vo and Meredith Ebert. Thanks for joining us tonight.
The Student Council has been very busy this year. We kicked off our fall advisory events with door decorating. Students really gave their all decorating their fall themes. First place winner was Mr. Fry's room in Challenger 6. Miss Fisher's room got punny with it with candy corn for second place in Challenger 7. Honorable mentions went to Mrs. Simmons' room with the It theme in Challenger 8. Everybody had a great time, and we are looking forward to further winter events. Spirit Week was also part of these events. Students participated in Blue and White Day, College Day, Neon Day, and went out with a bang on Costume Day. We wrapped up a busy start with the fantastic 6th grade dance. We had a record number turnout with almost 200 students participating. Many students came dressed in their Halloween best. Students had pizza, played games, and danced to the music Stylings by Me. What a way to start the year. The Wilmington Middle School Drama Club is very excited to perform their holiday presentation of Elf this year. Make sure to catch their amazing performance on December 2nd and 3rd. This is a great way to kick off the holiday season.
Robotics Club is off to a booming start. We continue to have a record number of student participants and are looking forward to a great year. World Language Club has kicked off the year with celebrating the Mexican culture. They have been exploring the music, food, and language of this area and have been really enjoying learning about their culture. Homework Club is back. Students have been coming to this club to study, complete homework, and work collaboratively with other students. This is a great space to be able to focus and engage with classmates in your studies. After-school sports continues to be a favorite among middle schoolers. Students have already been playing some of their favorite games in this club: soccer, basketball, pillow polo, wiffle ball, and everyone's favorite, pickleball. Stay tuned for more fun events in the future. The middle school is off to an exciting start. It is hard to believe that we are already at the end of quarter one. Parent conferences will be held on the 17th and will be available both in person and virtually.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the update. Wait, before you go, do you have any questions, comments? No, we're good. Thank you for being here. All right, next we have our high school representatives going to give us an update on all the happenings at Wilmington High. Thank you for being with us, and you introduce yourselves, please.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. My name's Audrey Lacan. I'm a senior, and I'm CAD lead on the robotics team. I'm co-president of Art Club, and I've been a student representative on various committees in the past.
My name is Maddie Benoit. I'm a junior, and I am the secretary of Model UN, Best Buddies, and Student Council, and I'm also on the leadership team for DECA. All right, so we're going to start this evening by discussing some of the special events that have been going on. We had a Spirit Week from October 3rd to the 8th with a large amount of participation from students, followed by the homecoming football game and a dance. This year, the dance was open to students of all grades, unlike last year where it was only juniors and seniors. We also had a student-organized clothing swap on the 17th. Students were able to bring clothes and other items and then donate or swap with other students. The goal was to prevent students from trashing old clothing and giving students an opportunity to find a new purpose for these pieces.
The 8th grade parent night at the high school took place on October 25th, and parents of prospective Wilmington High School students were able to learn more about the school as a whole and about the individual departments. And National Honor Society students gave tours while other students presented with department heads. And then the following Saturday, the senior class hosted a fundraiser at Cracked Kitchen and Coffee, and money raised will go towards senior events that will take place this spring.
In sports news, the girls cross-country team placed 4th at the Twilight International. 3 girls, Charlotte Kiley, Hannah Bryson, and Addie Hunt, received medals in the varsity race. Addie Hunt broke the school record running a 19:16.2 in the 5K, passing the record set by Callie O'Connell in 2012. Every athlete from Wilmington on both the boys and girls team side ran a personal best.
The boys soccer got its first win in 2 years, and the team made playoffs this season. And the girls soccer made playoffs as well. And the field hockey and cheerleading team are Middlesex league champs.
Sorry, just the, that was phrased weirdly. It's just the cheerleading team that are Middlesex champs. The
Okay,
girls team made playoffs though.
And then boys and girls soccer raised $3,000 for Hope and Friendship Metastatic Breast Cancer Foundation, and volleyball raised $1,700 during their Dig Pink game. And over the past few weeks, athletic teams have been hosting senior nights to celebrate the seniors in their last seasons of fall sports.
Beyond sports, we have had many exciting events during the school day. The school store has been opening up once a week during lunch. They sell school supplies and fidget toys. These, during W2, students have been completing independent work, attending exam review and extra help sessions, and also attending school programs and seminars. One of these seminars was hosted by the school counseling department and instructed seniors on how to fill out their common application. This included everything from linking accounts to Naviance to requesting recommendations letters and deciding which decision plan is the best fit. Many seniors have already applied to schools for early actions and decision deadlines from October 15th to November 1st.
Alice drills were also hosted during W2 on October 11th, and these drills are to prepare students to react appropriately and safely in the unlikely event of an intruder. And the period started with a presentation and then walked through 2 different simulated situations where students had to choose the best course of action.
Also held during W2 was the activity fair, which was organized by the Peer Mentor Program. Representatives from every club at the high school created posters to present their clubs to interested students. All of the freshmen were required to attend. This encouraged students' participation in activities by showing them opportunities that are available at the high school. I know there was a big boost from that for a lot of unknown clubs. And yesterday during W2, the 8th grade students were given a tour of the high school. They got to learn about the classes and clubs offered that they will have the opportunity to experience next year. They were also able to meet their potential teachers and learn about classes offered here. And before they left, they were also able to listen to a short performance from the marching band.
Our clubs have been engaging in many different activities. Model UN traveled to a conference at St. John's High School a few Saturdays ago. The National Honor Society has begun their tutoring program for students in younger grades. And the Robotics Club, along with students in both AP Physics classes, visited the STEM Career Fair hosted by UMass Lowell. Photo 3 took students on a field trip to the Peabody Essex Museum, and DECA attended a leadership conference at Bentley University along with other leaders of DECA chapters from across the state. And the Lamplighters Drama Guild performed their fall play Puffs last Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
Quarter 1 officially ended on Monday, and final grades for the quarter will be posted next week. Tomorrow during W2, the 9/11 Memorial Committee organized a knockout basketball tournament, Students Against Teachers. The money raised will go towards iPods for wounded veterans. And parent-teacher conferences will be held next Tuesday with an hour for virtual meetings followed by an hour of in-person meetings to allow more parents to participate. We will be having a Spirit Week and pep rally right before Thanksgiving break. Thank you guys so much for letting us share. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. That was excellent. Thank you so much for the update. Our next item of business, we have a PAC presentation from the Northside PAC, Christina Rodriguez. Thank you for being here. This is the night of presentations, I think.
Thank you. We brought the entire team.
Oh, great.
Everyone's
That's wonderful.
All right, thank you for having us. We're the Northside PAC.
Come on in.
For your presentation, you can use that to advance.
Oh, the click,
The little clicker.
clicker.
All right, thank you for having us. We're the Northside PAC, and we represent families from Woburn Street School and North Intermediate. Tonight is myself, Christina Rodriguez, the president, Teresa Smith, the vice president, Christy Toferi, our treasurer, Sarah Sheehan, our secretary, and Erica Garvin, our social media coordinator. Between us, we have 9 students in Wilmington Public Schools, 7 of which are at the schools that we're here representing tonight. So we set some goals for the year to support the families and students and administrations at these schools. We wanted to support our teachers by funding some requests they may have had for items they want for their classroom improvements. Teachers have asked for items, and we've helped them get those items, as well as students sponsoring enrichment activities that have been suggested by the administration, as well as providing activities that foster communities within the students, families, and administrators.
I'm Christy. I'm going to give the financial update. Right now, we currently have an account balance of $7,268.68. It currently reflects what we spent to date for the school year, which is the $5,238 shown in the little pie chart there on the right. Going from the top clockwise, we spent a little over $2,000 to date on supplies requested by teachers, as well as classroom supplies and prizes for positive behavioral intervention supports. The orange piece of the pie is a contribution for enrichment programs, most recently spent for a 4th grade field trip contribution to the Discovery Museum. And then a small piece of the pie that you can't really see is for operations. It's a whopping $18 for an annual submission for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to submit our annual report to maintain our tax-exempt filing status for a nonprofit organization. And then we've spent about $1,400 for the cost of events to date, which so far is the trunk or treat event, which my friend Sarah will go into in a bit. But the account balance does reflect the costs and then the over $4,000 that event netted on Halloween weekends. So we do anticipate more spending in the spring, and we're hoping that we get some more parent and guardian involvement in our monthly meetings so that we can get some more voices in how we vote on activities and allocation of these funds.
There we go. So we had our trunk or treat event on Saturday, October 29th at Swain Green. It was an absolutely beautiful afternoon. We had approximately 250 families join us. We collected over 1,300 pounds of candy and treats that were donated by the families of the Woburn Street and North Street schools. The classrooms that collected the most candy and treats earned an extra recess for their we had 20 trunks decorated by families. All of those treats that were collected were distributed by the trunks. We also had a police car and a fire truck come from Wilmington, as well as a tanker truck brought in by a local family. Mahoney's Garden Center provided us 110 pumpkins at a reduced cost for the families to decorate. We also had a craft table and a tattoo table for the kids. Temporary tattoos. We had great food for sale. We had a bake sale with treats donated by about 15 families from the school that raised over $500. We had food for sale. AJ's provided us pizza at a reduced cost that we sold. Code 1 Barbecue came and they donated back to us 10% of their profits from the event. That also made us over $500. We couldn't have done this event at all without local support from the Wilmington Town Selectmen, the Wilmington Fire Department and Police Department, Ruiz Trucking, Code 1 and AJ's. We had prizes for our costume contest and for the best trunks decorating. Those were donated by EJ's, Market Basket, 99, Tremezzo, and the Blue House Santa Project. And finally, we couldn't have done it at all without our volunteers who helped us both before and after the event, the families who decorated their trunks so wonderfully, and everyone who contributed and turned in for our awesome event. It was a really great time. We have a couple of fun pictures. So all of our pumpkins, all the treats, those car loads are all the treats that were collected, and then those are some of the great trunks that came. So it was a really great time. All right, planned activities. Teresa.
So, so far, we've stocked a teacher's lounge at both the North and the Woburn Street School. We pay for the annual student folders that go home. We fulfill, like we said, teachers' classroom equipment requests. That's ongoing. We did the Halloween event that we just talked about, and we have an ongoing apparel sale that we hope to wrap up in the next month. Upcoming, we're going to have a December social night for families. We plan on doing more enrichment for the schools. We are going to stock the Teachers Lounge again in the spring. We plan on having a parents' night out, some teacher appreciation week that we do. We provide lunch, we give some gifts, things like that. We have a big event that is under discussion, the Booster-thon, and the annual 5th grade yearbook and end of the year party that we do. We'll have another spring apparel sale. We plan on having a kids game night. We plan on providing treats for field day and kind of ending the year with a social to wrap up for our upcoming events.
So currently, as Teresa said, we have a swag sale, as we're calling it. So there's a picture of some items that we're selling, and that will wrap up next week. Wilmington Trophy, another local business, is helping us with that. And our December social event, we're thinking a seasonally appropriate cookie decorating contest. We'll have some holiday music and just let everyone get together before they disperse for the holidays.
Hi, I'm Erica Garvin. I'm the social media coordinator for the PAC. Lastly, I just want to talk about getting involved, and the best way that we think you can get involved is by being informed. And there are several ways to do that with the PAC. So we have a number of ways. We have the Northside PAC Facebook group, which we are posting in regularly. And we also have, I'm excited to say for the first time, a website called the North PAC news site. And you can get to it by joining the Facebook. There's a link that I believe the address somewhere. Oh, yep, it's on there. And what's great about the website is if you subscribe to the email list, you'll get event emails. You won't get spammed. You'll just get important event emails from everything from the swag sale, a direct link to shop, or whether the cookie invite, we'll have details, and we're keeping a blog there just to talk about the things that we're doing there, the little updates of what we have planned, and also a highlight of what we've done so far. So please join those, and we hope to see you at the next meeting.
Or event.
Or event, yes. Thank you.
Oh, and we're always taking donations.
Absolutely.
There is a link via PayPal, or you can always send in cash or check to the Northside PAC with your child to school. So, yeah.
This is great. Thank you, Melissa.
What is the date of your next meeting, so people will know when to?
It'll be next Thursday. I don't,
Yeah.
the third.
Are you in person, or are you virtual?
We've been doing them virtually.
Is there a link on your Facebook or web?
Yeah, so not only is there a Zoom link on the website, I'll also post it on the Facebook group, which we do regularly whenever there's a meeting, but also if you sign up for the email, I will directly send you a link. There'll be an email with the app. So real easy. We look forward to seeing you all there.
Any other questions or comments? David?
Just wonder if you could maybe describe for people who are interested in attending what kind of things happen at a meeting, like what kind of issues are discussed, how long they tend to go, like just what would people see if they...
Yeah, we've had 2 meetings so far. I think one was 30 minutes, one was an hour, but that hour was us talking about trunk or treat, I think a significant portion of the time. So the next one will probably be a very similar format to this. We usually go through, here's where we are financially, here are the things we see spending coming. So we did talk about spending in the spring, and that's something that we keep in mind because at the end of, next spring, we'll sponsor the 5th grade party, the 5th grade yearbook. We'll also cover teacher events. So we're really trying to plan things this semester and early spring to help us with the fall so that we're not like scrambling. So that's one of the things that comes up, the fundraising, like what we're going to do for the next, to get us prepared for the spring. I think you saw that Boosterthon was one of the things under discussion. That's a big fundraiser done by an organization. I think they're national now, but that's a big commitment, and we would really like to have attendance there to have that discussion because I think that's that's something that we would need everyone to participate in, and it's probably slightly less fun than the trunk or treat for the adults, but it's pretty fun for the kids. So like having those discussions about what are the pros and cons of this, it does take some time from school, but we also would have like a significant portion of funds raised to help, we wouldn't have to deny any requests, which has been kind of our goal. We've had to say like, oh, sorry, we can't do that because, we're trying, I don't think it's on the slide, but we have like kind of balanced how much we've spent at both schools. So both communities are getting the support they want, some through teacher requests, some through field trips, and we're just trying to keep that balanced, but that's something that we always bring up at these meetings.
And we always welcome new ideas. If you have any enrichment ideas for the students that you would like to discuss, we always welcome new fundraiser ideas. If you think of anything that's fun for the kids while raising funds, that'd be awesome. So we welcome, new people, new ideas, any partnerships.
It's also an opportunity to hear from the principals from the schools as well. They join and they give us an update on what's happening from both schools, and it's good to hear what events are coming up and what needs or requests are coming to their attention as well.
Mr. Smano.
Do you guys, is there any coordination with like the West Side PAC, the other side of town? I'm curious if you guys.
I think it's pretty difficult. So, having different funds and having different times, it's been difficult to coordinate. We're not, closing any doors, but if the opportunity presents itself, we definitely would. But I know that, their meeting times don't always coordinate with ours or dates.
Yeah, I do want to say they kind of inspired the teacher, when we got them snacks and filled the lounge. That's something that I guess that's been traditionally done through the West Side PAC, the Shawshing PAC. And so that was kind of something that they passed along that got word to us. And I was like, that's a great idea. And I think that was kind of the first time we reached out to families and we're like, hey, this is what we'd like to do. And people donated seltzers, candies, savory snacks, sweet snacks. And then Wildwood PAC has been in close contact. I think there's, like, my son's in Wildwood, so I tend to go to those meetings. And then they realized I did this, and they were like, oh, well, now we're going to send you emails and ask you questions. So there's been some coordination there, but I think we're just trying to, they want to sell some T-shirts, so I said I won't share our T-shirt sale with you guys, stuff like that.
That's great, thank you. Mr. Fennelly?
Not a question, more a comment. I just wanted to thank you guys. I have a son who's in the North Intermediate and one who just left for the middle school, and I've been to the events. I know the work and the time and the dedication that goes into it, so thank you. It's not lost on the family, so we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here and providing us the insight into your work. So much of the success, I think, in any educational community is built upon partnerships with those in the community. And one of the things that we're trying to do this year is providing more opportunities for the community groups, so many that we have, so much great work happening throughout the district, and to provide a spotlight here, an opportunity for you to share the good work. So there'll be more of these to come for those other community groups that might be interested in watching. But thank you for your work and your presentation here tonight, and all of the contributions that I know you're clearly making to our two communities here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
So much.
All right, we have some approval of items by consensus. Approval of minutes, October 12th, 2022. Is there a motion? Thank you, Mrs. Burns. Seconded by Mr. Fennelly. All in favor? It's unanimous. Acceptance of superintendent goals 22 through 24. This is a second read. Is there a motion? Mrs. Plowman, seconded by Mr. Smaha. All in favor? That is unanimous. And we have some warrants. G 10, 11, 12, 13, R 12, 13, 14, 15, L 24 through 37. Just making sure I'm not missing one. FS 16 through 21, and CP 03 and 04. Is there a motion? Thank you, Mr. Turner, seconded by Mr. Ragsdale. All in favor? That is unanimous. We have payrolls ending 10/26 and 11/9. Mrs. Burns, seconded by Mrs. Plowman. All in favor? That's unanimous. We have sped 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. Thank you, Mr. Samaha, seconded by Mr. Turner. All in favor? That is unanimous. And that is it, but there were a lot of warrants. A lot of warrants this time. All right. Our next item of business is the superintendent's report. Dr. Brand.
Thank you. Again, good evening, everyone. There are 3 items under the report this evening. I'll go in order. We do have a presentation that will accompany item B, middle school program review, which we'll get to in just a moment. And for those members of the community that might be interested, there are documents that follow each of these 3 items, starting with the enrollment in official Department of Education figures. As I think members of the committee know, we tend to try and wait until the October 1st enrollment. October 1st is a key date in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, because that is the date around which a data capture, thank you, is provided for all districts across the Commonwealth, and that certifies the enrollment for the school year. And so we wait for that October 1st number to come around to really provide an opportunity for us to settle in through September, and that's the snapshot that serves as our enrollment, our official enrollment for the year. The memo that is here provides an overview of what those numbers look like, and there is great care, specifically with Paul's efforts, to make sure that these numbers tie out and that they reflect what we have on file with the Department of Education. As you can see in the table, there's an overview back to fiscal year 13. Of course, we are in fiscal year 23 right now. It gives you a snapshot overview broken down by pre-K to 5 enrollment, the middle school, and the high school, as well as out-of-district placements. And just, of course, a note of reminder, out-of-district represents those students that are Wilmington students, but who are receiving education outside of the district for a variety of reasons. The total enrollment right now for fiscal year 23 sits at 2,786, and that represents a change of 15 students from last school year. We continue, and I'll talk about this in a moment, we continue to see a significant number of students that are leaving from 8th to 9th grade, but most notably, I think this year, we have seen an enrollment increase by, as you note there, 66 students at the elementary level. I think it's fair to say that it's not reflected in this document, but those are broken down by grades, and they're broken down There's sort of no specific pattern or area of focus. I think, if I remember correctly, they're sort of sprinkled out throughout all of our elementary schools. So that has offset the decline in enrollment from 8th to 9th grade. So that's a snapshot of where we stand from this year's enrollment numbers. On the second page of the memo, specifically speaking to the note of 8th to 9th grade and student retention, as I think it's appropriately referred to, or at least I've been referring to it as, I know well that this has been an area of focus and some conversation in the community for a little bit of time. I tried to provide a little bit of a different snapshot this year, speaking to, or addressing that 8th to 9th grade. First off, you'll see that we have, based upon our numbers right now, what we would term a 61% retention rate. That is to say that 61% of our students from what was the last year's 8th grade class made their way to this building that we're sitting in today. That is up from what was, as you can see, a 52% increase. So certainly, arguably, still a large number of students that pursued an educational setting outside of Wilmington High School. But I think also, as you can see, the variability in those retention numbers going back to fiscal year 13. The other piece of information that is a new element that's been added here, and I will note that these are, they're my calculations, but they're my calculations based upon the DESE numbers. It was random, the selection of Billerica and Tewksbury, just two communities nearby. This could have been an exercise that could have consumed a lot of, it's interesting, and it could have consumed a lot of time, certainly, but just that didn't permit. But out of interest, what do we look like in comparison to nearby communities? So that's the only reason that these two communities were selected. And I think what you can see there is, again, some great variability, number one, from year to year. And number two, that I think it's easy to argue that we don't look all that much different, at least through these years, and that of some of our comparative communities. So just meant here to provide you with some insight in terms of that. We're tracking that. We know that continues to be an interest for members of the community. And I think the final piece on that is that this is not, and again, I'll say this is not new to the Wilmington community. We have historically, over time, at least well over a past decade, seen a large number of our students leave the district and to pursue educational opportunities elsewhere. But anyway, I'll stop there and certainly welcome any questions if you have regarding enrollment.
Mr. Turner.
Thank you, Dr. Brand. So one thing, just in case people prefer numbers as opposed to percents, for the group that came in as last year's freshmen, from 8th grade to 9th grade, 120 students left the district. For the group that came in this year, from 8th grade to this year's 9th grade class, it was 100. So there was a decrease of about 20 students leaving the district. And so that percentage represents a real number and a real quantity of students who chose to come to Wilmington High this year. So
right, thank you, yeah, good point. And forgive me for not also addressing the last two pages, and maybe these graphics are helpful, maybe they're not, but this provided an overview, and it's relative, or it speaks rather to, I think, Mr. Turner, your point there in terms of what certainly is becoming more of a pronounced factor, I guess, if you will, is the fact that we are seeing an overall decline in enrollment across the board. So when you're talking about that 60% retention rate or 70% on top of a smaller aggregate number of students in the class, it's obviously going to be felt more. I think that there was interest for me anyway in taking a look at how we're trending in Wilmington in comparison to the state. And I think that we've talked about this before here. It's certainly been a source of conversation across different areas of the state. The state overall is seeing also a decline in enrollment, spread out over hundreds of communities. We're obviously most interested in ours, but I think the point is that we are seeing a decline in enrollment, and it's not just here in Wilmington, it is across the Commonwealth.
And
Mr. Turner.
And to follow up on that, I think the efforts made last year to start to do more outreach from the high school to the middle schools clearly showed some benefit. And I think it goes to the parents' night and the students' visit this last couple of weeks, that there is a lot more of a focus on that to really show and connect between the high school to the middle school. And I think that's great progress that we're making.
Mr. Samaha.
Just actually sort of a follow-up. Do you think you could just, to let, maybe remind the community, like what are some of those efforts that are being taken to, to sort of preserve those kids, keep the kids from 8th grade into 9th grade?
Well, I think really for us, it's rooted in making sure that we can stand behind a product, a service, and I don't mean to minimize it to just that, an educational experience that is going to put our best foot forward in meeting the needs of students who are considering Wilmington High School as their destination. It is inescapable to conclude that there will always be other educational institutions that will provide, for whatever reason, an interest and an attraction for students at the high school level. But it remains my belief that if we are ensuring that our program of studies is current, it reflects what is manageable to offer in terms of wide, breadth, if you will, of experiences, that's the best I feel that we can do to ensure that we are, providing that space and place for students to come. It's also, though, worth noting, and certainly Mr. Gendron and his team have made inroads in this direction of a more, in a limited period of time, obviously Ryan just joining us this year, but recognizing that to the degree of outreach, communication, and opportunities for the community to come into this school to see the great things that are here to offer will certainly, I think, help in terms of opening people's eyes and awareness, especially for those that might be their first child coming through the high school. Paul has said this many times, and it is true, and the data speaks to this. We may have a challenge around, if you look at it as a challenge, of retention of students from 8th to 9th grade. And maybe challenge is not the right word. But we don't have an issue of retaining students when they're here in the school. They stay. There is no question about that. The data speaks to that very highly. So, I think it'll be incumbent upon us to continue to do what we can to make sure that we're offering the best educational experience here at the high school.
Mrs. Fleming?
I just want to add to what Dr. Brand is saying, and I also think that we can't minimize some of the efforts that are happening at the middle school with a full program review and consultation with AMLE and looking at a lot of the educational programming there, as well as sort of the culture at the middle school, and also the alignment. We'll hear more about this later tonight, but the alignment between the middle school and the high school. And I think that those efforts are all also aiming to address some of the retention concerns that we have as well.
Thank you. I'm glad you said that. That was going to be my offering if I called on myself. Thank you. All right.
If I can make one more.
Are you kidding? No, I'm kidding. It was a joke. I'm just joking. It's directive.
One thing that I think is interesting about just kind of like the way that these kind of trends go year by year, especially when you kind of look at several years, is that the effects of some of the percentage of the retention rates only is felt when that class eventually leaves. And so even though the retention rate is up this year from last year, that we still have a decrease of students, and that will probably happen again for another year because the larger graduating classes from previous years are leaving and being replaced by, at this point, somewhat smaller classes. And I think that, hopefully that we'll be able to see some, shift in that, but that it really can't immediately turn around because you still have those larger classes and smaller classes coming up behind them. Mm-hmm. And so it's something that just can't be seen necessarily in the next year.
And if
Mr. Turner?
If memory serves, the current 8th grade class is a particularly small one, right? It's 189 or 190 students, somewhere in that range.
Is small.
One of the smallest ones we've had in a while. So that'll certainly be something, even if we had the same retention rate as this year or better, it could potentially be a smaller freshman class next year as well.
All excellent points. Can I move on? Thank you. All right, that brings us to item B.
Middle school program review. There are two things for this evening, but it's really meant to speak a little bit more broadly to the second round student scheduling. But in your packet is an overview of the action steps, the priority areas of focus that were, you've seen these before. They were part of the middle school program review that was, of course, presented to you as a committee and the community in the spring of last year. This is meant to just provide a quick update on what those items were in the different areas, and just a recap of the timeline that was originally set out, and a status update, which is the far right column. I'm happy to take any questions on any of these, but honestly, it was really, I wasn't intending to go through each of these at all tonight. But just to give you a sense of where things are at. And I think the most important thing that hopefully your attention will be drawn to is A, the fact that there's been a lot of steps that have been taken in a number of areas already, I would certainly argue, and B, two foremost areas. One, the student advisory program, which of course you heard about previously here at a previous meeting, but also the scheduling work. And that is really the intention that I wanted to shift, if I may, the focus to just rather quickly here tonight. So can I go to this, or there we go. Look at the magic with that. This is a presentation that will be added to the packet, and it's really hot off the press, and it's just hot off the press in the sense that this remains quite a fluid and active area of focus with Dr. Quirk, who's here tonight. You'll hear from her in just a few moments with her improvement plans, Miss Elliott, and a whole lot of other folks. This is, again, directly connected to one of the priority areas that emerged from the program review last spring, and this is intended to provide you with a brief update on the work that has unfolded. It's important work and timely work, certainly, as we're heading towards both budget planning as well as just planning for next year. So the slides that follow will just give you an update in terms of this work that has really consumed a fair bit of time over the course of the last couple of weeks. The background, again, as mentioned, the whole reason we're talking about middle school scheduling and reviewing the middle school schedule came out of one of the identified areas of focus and needed attention last year through the middle school program review. We partnered again with the Association for Middle Level Education, or AMLE. You will recall that they have been a driving force in helping shape the student advisory program specifically, and just really a great organization that we've come to partner with, and they helped in this effort as well too. The real central piece of this work is that third bullet, identifying recommendations for what can improve the conditions, the teaching and learning experiences, most importantly, for students at the middle school. This slide provides you an overview, and I'm so pleased, we were so pleased, Christine and I, to have a great complement of staff representatives from the middle school, but also those that are connected to the program specifically, in terms of our curricular leadership. You can see the many folks that were there. I think it's important to note, and I did try to do so on this slide, that this represented those that volunteered. They came forward to do so. This is no small thing. To be out of your classroom for a day is a tall order to leave plans, let alone 3. So I certainly want to take this opportunity and both commend and thank the many staff members here from the middle school who did just that. They met in 3 full days. It's actually not true in September. It was September and October. So I want to correct that piece there. The goals of this schedule review are noted on this slide. First, to gain an understanding of what really is considered to be best practices for middle school and young adolescents. There's a whole body of work or research rather, that speaks to this. To review the vision, mission, and beliefs of the middle school, specifically here in our community, and with all of that, the set priorities for creating really a responsive schedule around time and time on learning to help drive the kind of goals and the kind of work that we want here for our middle school. As part of this multi-day workshop that was actually held here in this room, there were 3 full and very, very busy days. Data was an important piece of this working group, and Miss Elliott was a part of all 3 days, as was Dr. Quirk and the team. They took a look at a whole host of data, and that included such things as student grades. We, of course, have access to them both historically, iReady data, the MCAS data, and so on. And here's what that data suggested. And this didn't come, I think this is important to note, this didn't come from the facilitator herself. This came from the group of those that you just saw on the slide previously. Tier 1 instruction, generally or broadly speaking, really has a need for improvement and greater attention, that it's not meeting a large percentage of students at the middle school, with ELA specifically being a focused area. There is no question, we talked about this before, I think through the program review, There are a lot of opportunity gaps, if to call them that, with students who are pulled from Unified Arts in the current schedule. In other words, we have a large number of students that unfortunately, because they're receiving services or interventions and support, they don't have the same access to the UA or Unified Arts program as do other students. You can see the third bullet there around grades and what seems to be a mismatch sometimes between performance on standardized measures and a couple of other things there that all, again, was yielded from the data analysis. I'm just trying to breeze through this in the interest of time, but happy to take questions if you have at the end here. So what the group was pushed towards, and I think, again, our facilitator did a really great job of sort of bringing together the group and driving them forward. And this is what they came up with when they took a look at the current schedule. The structure that's in place right now, the schedule that's in place right now, does not provide intervention opportunities to support students. And this is not just about students who might be receiving special education services. It could be regular education students as well. Tier 1 instruction really needs to be reviewed, and the rigor therein needs to be really a focus. Opportunities specifically within ELA and enhancing that curriculum. Some commentary there you can see, and some reflection upon the 8th grade and some of the challenges within the current schedule right now, and finally expectations across the board. So some of this certainly is broader than scheduling alone, but these were part of the findings in the analysis. So the group then moved through, well, what can we brainstorm here? If we're going to make some changes to the schedule based upon the data analysis, based upon what we think is most important for students, what would an ideal schedule or ideal schedule structure look like? There's a number of things here, but just briefly, a clear time when students can get help that doesn't take them away from other classes. And again, this is all students we're talking about, not just those receiving special education services. Talked a couple of times here in the previous slides around the standards and curriculum to make sure that that's appropriately leveled and have access, excuse me, professional development and opportunity to enhance that. Most certainly the opportunity in the schedule for increased student advisory time, something that we know is and firmly believe is important, and some other things there that were part of this brainstorming. And so all of this emerged or pushed towards, if you will, these priorities. So you've got this group, keeping in mind, you've got this group of staff there, they've looked at the data, they've understood what considered best practices, and they came up with priorities. If we're going to make changes to the schedule, what should the new schedule include? And you can see those here. Clear time in the day when students can get help that doesn't take away from their access to other classes. Time in the schedule for increased student advisory, additional time to support both reading instruction and a specific focus, again, on English language arts, and well-designed frequent meeting time. There's obviously a focus on student learning, but we understand well, and research shows very clearly that if there is regular opportunities for staff, educators to meet and to plan, that can only enhance instruction. So, I know I'm going through this quickly, but in the interest of time, because this is an important piece here as we move forward. Where are we at? What are the next steps? And you can see here, I tried to capture this in the slide. Those priorities that I just mentioned are where we left the 3-day workshop. Dr. Quirk, Ms. Elliott, and I are continuing to review those priorities, reviewing what came out of that work, and we are moving forward at a pretty rapid pace here, but it's one, again, that's important for our overall timing. We're meeting with Unified Arts teachers next week. Another update will be shared with middle school staff, and just by the way, they've been kept apprised of this work going forward, so I certainly want you to be aware of that. And it would be our intention to come back next week and give you an update again on this. This is again, it's a pretty fluid topic right now that we're trying to work towards. And where we sit right now, I really believe that not only do we need to, but we will be at a place of finalizing what the schedule revisions will be in December. So I know that's a lot. I apologize for that, but it's just, this is a central piece to this middle school program review. I'll pause there if you have questions, and Ms. Elliott can help me out, or I can try my best.
Mrs. Burns and then Mrs. Fleming.
So, in just looking at the program review updates that were shared in the folder, I just had a quick question with regards to school-wide expectations and the status of that that update, area of focus, which pertains to developing and implementing overall school-wide expectations that address discipline, behavior, expectations, et cetera. So the status dictates that they've currently updated our expectations for lessons on major areas in the building, such as cafeteria, hallways, bathrooms, et cetera, and these lessons were provided to the students through the first couple of days of school during the elongated advisory block. My question is, how is those lessons being supported in those areas? It's one thing to learn them, it's another thing to consistently support and direct, and I just, I'm wondering what that looks like, how that rolls out, because I'm sure this is just one element out of how they all,
Dr. Quirk, great. Thank you for coming
Thank you
forward.
for being
Mr.
here.
Faircloth wants to. I'm not sure who else was going to come up, but it is a good segue into the next part.
Sure. So those are reinforced throughout the advisory programs, the advisory time that we do,
Yeah.
as well as at grade level assemblies, and even impromptu ones during the cafeteria with administration, where we're capturing the students if there's something that particularly happened. We also have virtual pause, which are given to students. Where if a teacher recognizes something, that if a student did something in a great way, they get a virtual pause.
Great, so, because part of the execution of these lessons would have to occur in real time, and I just wasn't sure in the hallways, in the bathrooms, how staff and our support students in making the right choices.
Yes.
And meeting those
And
expectations of the
compliments
culture.
when they do a great job.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Mrs. Burns. Mrs. Plowman?
My question is related to the scheduling and to the unified arts. I would love, and perhaps this is part of the planning process, but I love looking at what other districts are doing and sort of what the research and the trends are showing. I'd also love to hear from students and families to sort of say, like, what really excites you, interests you, what are you kind of passionate about, so we could also tailor those choices to our specific community and what the interests of students in Wilmington, where those interests might lie for them. So I don't know if that, I know this time frame is small, and I don't know how we would go about that, and I don't know what other people's thoughts are about that, but I thought of it a couple times reviewing the packet.
Yeah, so I guess two thoughts. First off, one of the things that I think it's important for everyone to keep in mind is that it's understood that the schedule at the middle school, as I've come to understand, has been rather static and hasn't changed for some time, apparently. The fact of the matter is, and this goes from my experiences in different districts as well, it's not uncommon to tweak or adjust a schedule from time to time. Not to say every year that it sort of blow up and you start over again, but it's certainly not unusual to tweak or modify a schedule. So I think that as we're going into this work, I think it's just really important for everyone to keep in mind that where we might land for next year doesn't have to be for the next, shouldn't be for the next 5, 10, 20 years, that there may be adjustments. And I think with that, also the opportunity for that as well, that feedback and student and community engagement in terms of how we can shape that. I think that we're also looking at as well, and it'll speak to Ms. Elliott's presentation in a moment here around also the recognition of some needs to provide some pretty intensive support pretty quickly here. So, that may be a first phase of our efforts that may evolve or change over some time too. And again, I don't want to go too far ahead, but so I hear you. I think it's an important point, and we want to be mindful of that. So we're trying to balance a lot here, but I just think it's also important to point out that this work doesn't set in stone a new schedule for the next decade. It shouldn't, and that wouldn't be prudent, in my opinion. So,
Mr. Samaha?
I'm really happy to see these updates. So thank you for this. Looking at the scheduling priorities, through my own experience, these are all incredibly important. The one part where you're really focusing on not pulling students for some sort, Because what that ends up looking like is you have to pull the special, some students on IEPs out, and that's like the opposite of inclusion, and it's the opposite of really what we should be doing. So I'm really happy to see that. The second thing is the well-designed frequent meeting time. I know, like in my own teaching, like I have common planning time with the other ELA teachers at grade 10, like once a week, and it's transformative. It really is. So I'm happy to see those, see these priorities.
And so, there is common planning time at the middle school. It's just not consistent across all groups, right? They have team time once in a cycle. They also have grade level department for the core classes, right? So the hardcore, right? The math, science, social studies, and English. When we go beyond that, and those departments are across grade level, it is compounded, and it becomes impossible without some sort of coverage or something like that, and missing the class time, which is what we ultimately don't want either. So that is the goal there, that it's more consistent for every teacher and every department.
Okay.
Mr. Resto?
I think this is a lot of great work, and it's very, very exciting to see this moving forward. It seems to me that the kind of experiment we had with the directed learning period from the previous school year kind of informs a little bit of this, because having that, even though it was just done because of lunch flexibility, that turns out that actually having a period that does not otherwise have instruction assigned to it, and that people can go for extra help or have services or just do some homework.
A COVID bonus, as I like to call it.
has a lot of benefit. I want to talk a little bit about the rigor part of it, because that was something that really caught my eye, about increasing some of the rigor, and that the Tier 1 instruction may not be as rigorous as it needs to be. And I think this is also part of a larger conversation about grades and grading, which I think is not just a middle school issue. I think it's also at the high school, but it's more complicated at the high school, because there are a lot of students, and you can look back on kind of how many students were on the high honor roll and on the honor rolls over the years. There are a lot of straight A students at the middle school, and an even larger number who have like maybe 1 B and then the rest are straight A's. But then, for example, as we're going to talk about later on today, when you look at some of the MCAS results, and again, they're only a snapshot of certain foundational, they're by no means everything, but again, certain foundational skills. And it seems that there's a mismatch there, and it's a tricky problem to get at. But I think that that's something that we really do need to look at closely, because if families are getting a signal that my student is getting straight A's, then that sounds like everything's great, and they're getting exactly the high rigor of instruction they need and doing and excelling. And then if it turns out that we are not seeing that kind of achievement in other measures, then I think we have to look at what kind of signal that we're sending to families and parents, and making sure that it's aligned with reality.
The rigor part too is also providing those opportunities for students to go above and beyond, right? We have limited amounts, like with algebra, for example, and enhanced math in the 7th grade, but it's often forgotten at the middle school or elementary level. Like, we focus on what kids need to get to grade level, but not what kids can go do to get beyond grade level. And so that's where that's coming from too, with that piece, not just looking at grades and math, you know what I mean, and making sure that the rigor in general is there, but also providing, whatever you want to call it, enrichment opportunities to go beyond where they are in the class at a typical grade level, if they're able.
And I agree with you, David, and I think it actually works in the opposite direction too, where students are meeting grade level standards, but their grades aren't necessarily showing that. So children may see themselves as not meeting grade level, or not seen as students in a way, because they assume the grade is what represents being a student. And then we think about our retention and where students are choosing to go. And I think that's actually a big piece of this, a piece of this puzzle. I don't know how big it is, but it's a piece of this puzzle. So I think that goes in both directions. It's sort of, if they are, but they are consistently not receiving honor roll, what is that signifying to that student? But then maybe they see their MCAS scores, the family sees the MCAS scores and says, oh, interesting, they are meeting expectations, right? I didn't expect to see that. So I think that there's a lot of work to be done with grading and aligning to what does it mean to be on grade level, and what does it mean to be an A student, I think is actually quite different. And I'm not saying it's just in Wilmington, I think that's sort of across our nation. But I think that is definitely a piece of this for us to really deeply consider. Sure.
Just wanted to add some context too. So through that process, and I wanted to bring up one bullet specifically, but through that process when we talked about rigor, basically it was, we analyzed data, we made our own, we observed it, we made statements, we made inferences around this data. So some of those bullets are some of the things that we were hypothesizing. So not, a full true root cause analysis of it. So these were things that were brought up as ideas from the group. So not conclusion that every course is not rigorous enough. When we talked about the 80%, the consultant had said, okay, here's the question: are 80% of your students, when we think of a typical tier pyramid, are 80% matching the or meeting the needs, meeting the curriculum expectations? And we are using MCAS data from 2 years of a pandemic, to help draw some conclusions around that where we know there was interrupted learning. So on that data, it certainly was not. We have other data that says, yes, we're much closer to that. However, so there's that piece I just wanted to bring up. The other piece I wanted to mention was that on one of the bullets, it talked about the reading, not a standard reading curriculum, and I wanted to add some context there because we certainly do have clear, consistent curriculum maps for each grade level, 6, 7, and 8 in our language arts classrooms. What the group observed from that piece was that in math, in science, we have licenses and programs that we use to help, not as the sole curriculum, but as a consistent tool and resource, whereas in ELA, we don't have that same level. So we were hypothesizing, does it help teachers with consistency and alignment to have that program as well, where we don't have that in ELA, so.
Thank you. Mrs. Harmon.
I had this question. I was going to bring it up during the MCAS portion of our meeting, but it seems appropriate to ask now. I'm wondering, is there a correlation? So we moved to using iReady. I think a lot of districts moved to using iReady as an assessment tool, and I'm just wondering, are we feeling like, is that giving us accurate data? Because if we're using that, if teachers are using, I'm really honestly just trying to understand this, but if teachers are using iReady scores to sort of gauge what their student's grade is, but or a portion of, right? It's an assessment tool. Mm-hmm. And then we're getting these MCAS scores that are not aligning with our classroom assessment tools. Does that make us pause and say, wait, is this not giving us accurate data on how students are doing? Is it, I don't know, because we've moved a lot to like electronic assessments, which I know we have to, but sure. Is something getting lost in that process, I wonder?
So I can tell you that, so we have iReady for ELA, and we're piloting it for mathematics as well right now. But I recently met with the 6th grade team, and we had 2 little mini data meetings with 6th grade to really look at the iReady data. We also looked at the 5th grade rising student data as incoming 6th graders. We looked at all this MCAS data as well as iReady. So it doesn't, it's not necessarily giving a grade, but what it is doing is it is identifying specifically what areas students have deficits, which areas of reading that they're struggling or on grade level or above grade level. In our work recently, we looked at that data to identify, okay, we have some serious trends across all students that we're seeing, and we went through their units, their ELA units for the year and said, okay, where are we hitting this? Where do we need to add some emphasis? Where do we need to do extended or reteach or pre-teach something before you get to that unit based on the data we're seeing in iReady? So there's the looking at it from that curriculum lens and thinking about how do we change what we do. We talked a lot about the existing reading intervention classes as well and how this data can really inform what that curriculum looks like. What's exciting to me, but I know frustrating to those in seat, is that we are identifying all of this data and all of these things, and then we have structural issues, which we just talked about with the scheduling, that limits the amount of support we can provide. Certainly teachers can differentiate in class and try and meet kids' needs, but we don't have, right now, our structure, we struggle. And, you know, we met with Dr. Quirk the other day and had a proposal, can we talk about maybe changing some student schedules around to make sure we're getting the intervention that they need. We had students who were, at the end of last year as spring fifth graders, we had maybe some question, or maybe they need intervention, and things have really improved for that student, and now they're in an intervention class, and we're like, well, this isn't the right place for that student, and somebody else might need it more. So we've, you know, for me, it's exciting because I feel like we have the tools and the data, we have the information, we're creating the opportunity for teachers to have these conversations, and now, you know, we're also adjusting the schedule so that all of this can come together and really be meaningful and purposeful. So I think it's a good tool. I think it provides us with a ton of information and resources, and I think we're increasingly using it as we go. Dr. Quirk and I will be continuing, and Mia Parviainen has been joining us, and we'll be continuing to meet with each of the different grade levels throughout the course of the year as well.
If I may add, additionally, last year, we trained the entire staff, so not just English or reading
Correct.
teachers, you know, all subject matter teachers, with the importance of understanding that reading is across every subject, even as a former math teacher, right? Because when you read a graph, you're reading, right? And understanding and interpreting. So that importance, and so for every teacher, that they can look at the data and understand how it can be applied in their own classroom.
We're talking a lot about ELA and reading, and one thing that really stood out to me as well was writing scores. And I you know, there's lots of plans, I think, happening around deploying our reading specialists across the district and making extra time on the new middle school schedule, perhaps for more reading time. Will that encompass writing as well?
I think it's going to have to, and you'll see in the MCAS presentation soon, the nationwide, or at least statewide, in the data I'll be speaking to, the decrease in students' writing skills. And when you think about what hybrid learning or remote learning looked like, there wasn't a lot of pen to paper, there wasn't a lot of writing necessarily happening just because of the situationally, you know, where we were. So for some students, those were, you know, young students at a very formative age, that's where it's developing. We're definitely behind, and we need to continue to work on that. I think, you know, that will be something across all grade levels that we need to focus on, but I do think that when we talk about that intervention schedule and support for ELA in general, that will allow for some more flexibility for support there, and maybe possibly thinking about, you know, there's a lot of, when we talk about English language arts at the middle school, it is definitely reading and writing connected, but having some very deliberate opportunities for students to support them through that as well for kids who need it.
Thank you.
So I'm wishing we'd put this in old business, because I'm realizing that this is, what I'm trying to do is when it's superintendent's report, it's more of just, here's some new information, and this clearly is something we really do want to talk quite a bit about, which I understand. So I'm gonna ask, if this is MCAS related, there is going to be a presentation about MCAS coming up. So if this could wait until that would be great. If it can't, then.
It's not MCAS related, that's
Okay.
why. So if it's appropriate, I'll ask it here, otherwise I can wait.
That's fine, no, if it doesn't, I'm just trying to shift the MCAS stuff to a little bit
Yeah.
later.
So specific to this particular piece about the scheduling, one of the data suggests points is on 8th grade high absence rate over multiple years and low sense of belonging on the panorama data. In terms of the reaction to that and the priorities in the scheduling, is the reflection on that in the advisory line, or is there something else that that the team was thinking of to try and help with that part of the students learning and being ready to learn, being present to learn physically and emotionally? Or is there, can you speak to that point?
Consolidated, Dr. Quirk.
So yes, I mean, it's the relationship building across the entire school is happening during the advisory time. but the use of, for example, the student council in the 8th grade, and even 8th graders in general across the building. They're not just with student council, but there's other things that will be coming up where we're involving them as the seniors of the school or the upperclassmen. But that relationship building is primarily happening now. And I mean, not that it didn't happen before, but it's, that's what advisory time and one of our objectives is.
So connected with that, but I think that actually this might have kind of cleared up a bit of confusion that I had. So another of the 8th grade points for what the data suggests is that they're gearing up. It says they're gearing up for high school and need to have a higher focus on relationships, and lots of curriculum can get in the way of that. And I think what that's trying to say is that the focus on relationships while they're in 8th grade, like that social aspect of 8th grade of kind of just being tough, being in middle school. You're right on the cusp of high school, so you have a major transition coming up. And so, like, in the 8th grade context, that we need to be mindful of those relationships that they're developing and the connection they have with the school and the community. But when I first read that, I thought that we were talking about, like, oh, in high school they'll need more relationships.
No.
No. So I was a little confused, but what Mr. Turner just said a moment ago kind of, I think, snapped that in. So is that the correct interpretation of it?
That is the correct interpretation. And it's also, it actually matches nicely with one of the things for my program review, and one of the things that I'll talk about a little now is, the vision of the high school student, right, of them getting geared to be in high school. It is an extension of the vision of the graduate. It's something that DESE is now starting with, or has been for the last couple of years, to tie in 6 through 8 and start with the MyCap and their vision for careers and things of that nature. So all of that is what is being planned. It's the advisory program in its essence is that, it's going to take 3 years to, right now we're doing sort of the same sort of lessons throughout the entire because it's our first year, right? But by the time the 6th graders now are 8th graders, they'll have different lessons every year too. It would have been too much to try to plan all 3 grades. So you'll be seeing that even more as the grade levels matriculate through.
Okay, I'm gonna stop us there. I'm just gonna make one quick comment. I know it's not exactly in line with this particular piece, but when we think about schedule, I can't help but think about school start time. And so if I'm thinking about redesigning a schedule, I'm also thinking, okay, where are we with school start time? Because we all know that I won't go into what we know about the middle school start time. So I'm not gonna go into that. However, I wanna make sure that that's a part of this work and that we're not sort of saying, okay, we're doing this, and then we're going to revamp it all over again when we change the start
It's a
times.
great point. School start times is one of the many projects that is ongoing in the background and that will be before you in December. But that start time has no direct, it really doesn't have any direct impact on what this schedule is. That if we're going to make a shift, the shift can happen regardless of what the resulting schedule will be at the middle school. We still have the bookends of the start and end time, the length of the instructional day. That will remain the same, no matter what time exactly. But so thank you for asking the question. I know it looms out there.
Thank you. All right, so looking at timestamps, and we have quite a few people here. I'm trying to be respectful of their time as well. So we are actually at the public comment time, so if it's okay with the committee, can I shift that before new business?
Absolutely.
And so to our presenters, Dr. Quirk and Mr. Gendron, are you comfortable with that? Okay. All right, so we're gonna move into public comment now, and then we will switch to new business and old business. I'm also respectful of your time, so I will try and move things along, I promise. So I will switch that over to David. I just wanted to say a thank you to the Ed assistants for these gifts. Thank you very much, and it's nice to see you all. All right, Mr. Ragsdale.
All right, so we have 3 people who signed up for public comment. When I call you, please come forward, give your address and name, and limit your comment to 3 minutes, please. The timer will go off after 3 minutes. So first is Janet Fiore.
I'm going to speak on behalf of Janet. As I sit and think back on my journey as an educational assistant, I feel I deserve a living wage. I started working for Wilmington Public Schools in 2008. I worked in 4 schools here in town since I started. I worked as a one-on-one and then as a classroom assistant, and I've also worked in the Learning Center for a few years. I enjoy working with these students, and it feels very rewarding when you see the growth that they make throughout the years. It's not all about what we do academic-wise with the students. We're also there for social and emotional support. Our job is more than just teaching. We're there with when a child may need just a simple hug or to wipe the tears. We are there to assist with feeding some students, with toileting students, or changing clothes because they have soiled their clothes. We're there when they are having a bad day and they want to hurt themselves, or when they're throwing things or destroying a classroom. We're there as they stand on tables or throw tables and chairs. We're there to protect others. We are the core of our schools as educational assistants, and we deserve respect and deserve a living wage. Our assistants just coming in can make more at McDonald's or Dunkin' Donuts, but they choose to come here. So please support them and those who have been here for years. Let's show that the community cares for our staff teaching our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Barbara Bodwin.
Hello. Barbara Bodwin, 1 Leonard Lane. So I want to start my public comment tonight by thanking you all for your continued dedication and service to Wilmington Public Schools. We know that the last few years have been had so many challenges, and I appreciate the enormous effort that you've all put in helping us navigate WPS through these times. Tonight, I'm hoping to encourage you to include a line item in the academic year 2023-24 budget that specifically addresses the need to change school start times for our middle school students in the coming year. Middle school is a time of enormous transition. Physical and hormonal changes lead to changes in a preteen's sense of self, and comparisons are rampant between kids maturing at different rates. Social networks and hierarchies are shifting at the same time that kids can be more self-conscious and sensitive to the opinions and reactions to others. Anxiety and worry can be more common as academic demands increase and kids begin to more fully understand the world around them. It's not easy. And for this particular group of preteens, they come to this age following a period of social isolation during the pandemic that has challenged their foundation from the start. We all recognize this as a challenging time. However, the district has reviewed evidence over the last year that our middle school students may be struggling more than those in other areas. Our middle school MCAS scores are lagging, and risk surveys have indicated that students themselves feel bullying is a significant concern for them at middle school. I think it's important for us to consider that our early start times may be having negative effects on academic progress, social interactions between students, and overall perceptions about their school experience. As a parent, the transition between summer and the start of school has instantaneous effects. My son's alarm is set for 6:15 in order to for him to make the bus at 6:40. He changes his eating patterns day one, giving up breakfast as he can't stomach food at that hour, and his lunch hour begins at 10 a.m. After a week, he is quick to snap at his brother, and dark purple circles line his eyes. The stress of learning the expectations of 7 new teachers and navigating different configurations of peers typically leads to a breakdown over some inconsequential issue a couple of weeks in. We've talked about anxiety, restrictive eating issues, self-harm, and anger management all within the first few weeks of the school year. I know how I feel when I haven't had enough sleep. My mind is hard to focus. I'm cranky and far less patient and kind than I should be. My stomach is upset and I often get headaches. I muscle through, but do not feel good about my performance at work or at home. We simply cannot expect our kids to navigate this very vulnerable stage of life without giving them the best chance possible. As a district, as a school committee, and as a community, we must do better by these students, follow current research, and make middle school and high school start times appropriate for their developmental stage. Ooh, am I over? I got one more sentence. I urge you all to be bold in taking action, whatever plan you think is best, and request the resources that allows us to change school start times this year. Thank you.
Third is Sarah Sheehan.
Hi, Sarah Sheehan, 29 Marcus Road. There is a common expression that goes, those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. We educate our children in history and social studies from an early age in the hopes that they can learn from the past. Early last week, NPR carried a story revealing progress in an Oklahoma project where more than 20 unmarked graves were found, believed to be victims of an event known as the Tulsa Race Massacre of 1921. In October of 2019, my husband and I tuned into HBO to watch the premiere of a new series called The Watchmen. The opening scene took place in Tulsa and depicted a horrific attack on a Black community there. I really thought the show was pushing the boundaries of believability. I mean, there were planes dropping bombs on a neighborhood. I soon learned that was not fictional, and that scene did not stray far from the reality of events, including those planes. Early in the 20th century, Tulsa reported a large number of affluent, educated, and professional African-American residents in the Greenwood District. They had such success there that the district became known as Black Wall Street. On Memorial Day in 1921, a Black man was accused of harassing a white woman. That triggered a mob, fueled by fear and anger over the success of this Black community, to attack that Greenwood district. The total number of deaths is still unknown to this day, estimated to be in the hundreds, but largely due to the fact that the authorities at the time downplayed that violence and buried bodies in mass graves and refusing to let families come to the burials. Ultimately, 35 blocks of the Greenwood neighborhood was destroyed. Imagine the entire stretch of Main Street from the Wilmington commuter rail station to Silver Lake, gone, burnt to the ground. Property damage amounted to more than $34 million in today's money. About 10,000 Black people were left homeless. Thousands fled Tulsa, and thousands more were rounded up and held against their will by the National Guard. There were no convictions on any charges related to violence. A murderous rampage, including airplanes firebombing an American city, led to no convictions of violence. Society often attempts to bury ugly truths, and the Tulsa Massacre is no different. The riot was largely omitted from local, state, and national histories until 2001, when a bipartisan commission reported that the city had conspired with that racist mob and recommended a program of reparations to survivors and descendants. Oklahoma has taken steps to right those wrongs. The state passed legislation to establish scholarships, encourage the economic development of the current Greenwood neighborhood, and develop a memorial park. Teaching about that massacre is now a required part of the school curriculum there. But this event is one example in racially fueled violence against Black Americans, which have happened all over our country. I'm very proud that Wilmington has a strategic plan in place to prioritize the teaching of equity, inclusion, and diversity. I encourage the schools to expand upon this plan because we must resist hiding and denying our history, whether knowingly or in ignorance. Teaching history and social studies is meant to enable the mind of our children, allowing them to walk through a world understanding that it is bigger than their own experience. All those voices need to be enabled to tell their stories, and ears need to be enabled to hear them. Thank you for your time.
That's who we had signed up. Is there anyone else who would like to make a public comment?
Thank you for tonight. My name is Jane Woods, 17 Fairview Ave. Thanks for moving the time up for us. As you know, my statements take on a serious tone, and tonight is no different. So tonight I'd like to speak to you about what I and my colleagues, excuse my voice, see as a serious injustice. As you're aware, the Wilmington assistants continue to battle for a livable wage. We remain without a contract and have been so for 7 months. You're also aware that our wages sit at or below poverty level, yet no agreement has come for us. We continue to meet with you in good faith and put forth marked movement in our negotiations. In years past, we felt defeated in our quest to be properly compensated for the professional work we do with Wilmington's children. However, this year we have new resolve. This year, we indeed are united and we are strong. We agree that as a unit, it is time that you look at us in the same professional light that you look at teachers. We're educated and professional, contributing members of your school community. The tides are turning in our neighborhood districts. These districts are stepping up and recognizing the error of their ways. They are finally compensating their educational assistants with wages that are not only respectable, but are competitive and meet or exceed the living wage guidelines for the state of Massachusetts. There are no whispers of staff reductions, just flat-out compensation that speaks to respect. It's not lost on us that you've put your self-interests ahead of us once again in the form of the state-of-the-art town hall school administration building you're proposing. In doing this, you have failed to completely address the needs, wants, wishes, and requirements of the children and staff of the Wildwood School. For years, the Wildwood School has been allowed to degrade. While each administration denied this fact, we knew better. Each year, increasing issues with the building were observed, brought to the attention of admin, and were ignored, denied, or basically not addressed at all. I started my career at the Wildwood and found myself going from a healthy individual to an individual constantly fighting off one illness after another. When I left the Wildwood, those symptoms dissipated. My daughter Emma attended the Wildwood and would move on to develop cancer in the 6th grade. Of course, I cannot prove that her and countless other staff members, as well as students with cancer diagnoses and other illnesses, are directly related to the toxic atmosphere and working conditions that the Wildwood School held. But as you are aware, the school had been allowed to degrade for many, many years before my daughter would walk through the doors as a young child. Staff members as well as students were exposed to mold, mildew, soot-stained ceilings that covered already existing asbestos, rodent excrement, water damage, failing heat, windows that barely opened, and on we go. This is now not news to you, and my long belabored point is, here we wait, professionals paid like paupers, and schools crumbling on top of us, while you entertain the idea of putting a $5 million tourniquet on a dead building, a building that should have been closed years ago. You want us to waste $5 million. As a taxpayer, I find this an egregious use of funds, and as an ed assistant, I find this an insult to not only our children, but our Wildwood staff. I'm almost there. On November 19th, a special town meeting will be held. You will be asking taxpayers to assume a very large tax burden. There are many vacant buildings in our town that would be suitable for your offices. As a governing body, you must put the needs of your staff and students before your own at this time. Compensation equals respect.
The committee also received an additional written comment that we have all read in advance of the meeting.
Thank you. So we will now, where am I, new business? Move into new business. Our first item under new business is the school council improvement plans, middle and high school. We have Dr. Quirk and Ryan Gendron. You want to come join us over here? You're not going to, separate? That's okay. No, I'm just,
I think it's okay, right?
well, it's fine. Well, whatever,
Yeah.
however you've planned it, it's fine with me. I wasn't sure if Mr. Fairclough, I wasn't sure if they wanted their assistance with them.
Yeah. Were you going to come up to me?
Whatever. Mr. Gendron, did you want to have
you gonna
your
have them all come
assistant? That's fine.
Yeah, well,
I'm sorry. Sure. Hello.
Good evening. Okay, so for the middle school improvement plan, there are ultimately 3 goals that we will be working very hard to accomplish this year. The first is to develop a schedule to promote student growth and success. The second is to implement a school-wide Tier 1 social emotional support and development program. And the third would be to engage families in multiple and meaningful ways to bridge home and school partnerships. I thought it would be nice to add this slide and the next slide. The pictures, just so that you know, are that are throughout this presentation are pictures of the groups of students, different groups of students during the door decorating contest. So they are all Wilmington Middle School students. The core beliefs, which is this slide, and the purpose statement were a deliverable that came out of our first day of the scheduling committee work that we had done with the AMLE consultant. It was a great way to just look at our values and we looked at the vision and mission statement that we currently had, and the staff really that were on the committee spent some time developing these, and I thought it would be important to share tonight, right? So they are, everyone has strengths and areas of growth. They do not define them, but help to make them who they are and what they have to offer. Relationships are important. All staff and students will be challenged and held to high expectations in a safe and supportive environment. Collaboration is essential, and all students will learn with the support of the learning community. Additionally, the purpose statement came out of that work as well, which exemplifies the core beliefs that students and their voices will drive the work that we do every day. We will work collaboratively in a safe and supportive environment to achieve common goals. We will build and foster relationships that support the greater school community. We will develop and implement support for every student, meeting them where they are and focusing on progress. Teachers will be provided with protected time to collaborate and plan lessons that are challenging and engaging. I had touched upon this earlier, that it's more to make sure that everyone of the teaching staff is getting that protected time, right? That now we currently do it for some, but not for all. We will engage with the community to create a well-rounded experience that includes exploration and different career fields. That will also help incorporate with the vision of the high school student. I'll talk more a little bit later, but they'll be specifically in the 8th grade. It deals more with the career piece to that. We will work to achieve a positive and enjoyable experience for all in the learning community. So I was really proud of these last two slides and the data and the work that came out from those days. We, as a committee, we then sent it to the staff and also asked for feedback. So it's really, truly something for all of the, I would say, the Wilmington Middle School staff that they contributed. So, one thing I wanted to touch upon was that our school advisory council members for this year, we had a lot of want for participation last year from the parents. We had to do an election. The parents will have students in the school for the next 3 years. So. Even Ms. McCarty, I believe, will have another student, but either way, that they'll be here for multiple years. So I have Carla Ientel, Danielle Riccardi, and Justine Viveros as the parents. The staff, of course, myself, Jen Crane, Bonnie Garassi, and Jack Madden all participate in the School Advisory Council. Next meeting is tomorrow night. Hi. So specifically to talk about the goal of developing a schedule to promote student growth and success. So the work that we're definitely doing with the school the school scheduling committee is part of this. Creating that advisory program to build those connections is also part of this as well. Looking at the UA classes as we've talked about, it's not going to be something that's all going to be fixed, as Dr. Brand had said earlier. There'll be phases of things where we're looking at things, improving upon things, and making changes. Of course, surveying students and families along the way to see what they might be interested in. That also goes with, it's also the reason why, like, we're trying to promote different after-school clubs, right? And continuing to build upon that catalog of opportunities. Provide time and resources to the creation of cross-disciplinary projects. I think that just innately just also helps with relationships, not just with students, but with their teachers, and, showing them as well how really you would work together as adults in the working environment, right, to produce a common goal. So those are some of the deliverables we'll be working on. Additionally, as I had mentioned, we'll be promoting and instructing on the WMS core values. Ms. Byrne, another way that we are going to be commending students to is that virtual kindness wall that I had talked about during my entry meeting, right? So there'll be some plastering of
Additional positive reinforcement.
Positive reinforcement. I'm kind of excited about the development of the high school student. It does tie directly with the vision of the graduate, with the program with DESE. They currently have objectives for each grade level. I've gone to a couple of informational meetings so far, and there's actually a grant opportunity I'll be looking into to help develop the team and to do this, but it would all be tied into work that we could then do with the students during the advisory program as well as in other classes. But specifically for the 8th grade, they do talk about different careers and goals. There is that, I'm learning about it, but the MyCap account that I believe that they have at the high school level, and that they can start it as an 8th grade and start tying in their goals. So that work would, of course, need to be in conjunction with, the high school administration. The vertical alignment that I've been working on with Mr. Gendron this year has been great. I look forward to continuing to do that because I think that's very important, right, for a variety of reasons. But let's see. Of course, the advisory program and, just working with our school counselors to provide more opportunities to work with our students, even with our SEL support staff. We're currently in the process. We did a 6th grade social school. We're doing a 6th grade social skills group. Currently, right now, it's got 2 more weeks after school. So just, different opportunities, more opportunities for things like that. And the last one, engage families in multiple and meaningful ways to bridge home and school partnerships. Continuing to build traditions for Wilmington Middle School and invite students while providing a safe environment for all to participate and have fun. I know that the middle school pack will be presenting later on in your schedule of your calendar, right? But their participation and their help, and even bringing in more parents, like for the dance, for example, we did for the 6th grade, they were instrumental in helping and getting people to help for different activities with that. Just, I think the more exposure in a variety of ways of parents coming in is going to be important. We want to create, different events that will become traditions. So the moving on ceremony is definitely one of them. We're not afraid to look into bringing things back. I know that there were larger trips, for example, for 8th grade and things of that nature. Those do take quite a bit of planning. We also need to have staff participation in those. If it's not this year, we're continuing to look into things and just to make those traditions and have the students and the families be there and be supportive and participate. The ultimate goal with any tradition or activity that we want to do is that we want everyone to feel that they want, that they would come. I'm looking at attendance rates, like the dance that we just had. We had 189 students out of the 211 in the 6th grade. It was one of the highest attended events, right? And looking back at different 8th grade events, they might not, or other events, they might not have been so highly attended. So that, the goal is to try to find things that students will want to come, can afford to come, and feel that they can be safe while they're there is ultimately our goals. the communication plan too, just working on different ways that we can be building upon, the constituent groups of the students, the families, and the community at large. Working with, partnering with different businesses and things of that nature as we move forward. Any questions?
Mrs. Burns?
So I did ask you a question. I know it was sent to you. So I was wondering if there was, and maybe you haven't had time because I really am very happy to see these objectives and goals that you have, and I commend you for taking this on, and it's a living and breathing document which will only enhance and grow from here, which I love to see as opposed to a one-shot deal and move on. But any discussion about seeing there alternative ways about possibly bringing back those 8th grade field trips, whether it be day trips like New York City? I know they were volunteered by staff, but to practice what one learns within their small school community in the larger world, I think is just so very vital. I'm not saying tomorrow or next week or, but I'm just wondering that those excursions really play such an important role in the socialization, education, and just experience to
Yes, sure. So, like I had said earlier, we're just trying to build traditions. All experiences that we had previously we'll be looking at.
Okay.
Anything that's, overnight or those longer out-of-state trips would definitely need not only, student and family participation. That's why I'm looking at like attendance rates and things of that nature, but also the staff participation. If it's not for this year, we'll be continuing to look at things going forward. I can tell you that currently, I've been working with a variety of teachers at the school to have a lot of different field trips and events for students, new ones that we've never experienced before. And again, trying to make any event not just affordable for everyone to be able to participate, but also something that we feel that the majority of students would be interested in going to as well. In the past, if it wasn't here in Wilmington, in my previous district, we went to New York City for 3 days, right? And that time is a great and fabulous time. It is quite a bit of money, right? And I want to make sure that all families can afford to go to everything that we do. So, finding ways that we can fund those things too, without going to Mr. Ruggiero.
You may have to. That's what he's there for. Daddy Warbucks over here.
So, nothing is off the table. If it's not for this year, we're always in talks to try to bring.
I just hope
meaningful-
at some point it will come to fruition, because I think it's a wonderful opportunity, and I think I'd like to bring back that rite of passage for those 8th graders in some capacity. And I'm sure, if it's not the ones from the past, I'm sure you'll come up with some new and interesting factors. Thank you.
Other questions or comments?
Sorry. I just have a couple questions. One is related to the advisory blocks, and I know you're working really hard at understanding Panorama, utilization of that resource, starting to implement MARC lessons, doing the core value lessons, and I'm just sort of thinking about, or just wanting to understand, are teachers feeling like it's cohesive, and are students feeling like it's cohesive? Because it's a lot of different sort of SEL kinds of themed lessons happening, and I think it makes it a little, it can sometimes feel for teachers, I think in some of my consultation experiences, sort of feeling like, wait, what are we doing? It's just a lot of balls to be juggling in terms of the SEL stuff that they're being asked to do. And then I think that trickles down to kids too, and sort of, it can get a little diluted. And so I love all of those, but just wanting to make sure that everybody's sort of feeling like it's cohesive and something that kids are carrying with them throughout the day and sort of being mindful of. And so that was just one thought I was having, and I guess it's not really a question, but just a thought I wanted to kind of share. And
I can further that. So we have not surveyed the students as of yet. We wanted to get a couple of months on board with the students, as you know, we tried to, the first couple of days of anything, we're gonna try to do our best, right? We have consistently presented and asked teachers how things are going, asked specific questions and surveyed them as we've gone along, and we'll continue to do that. We do try, ultimately the goal of advisory is to build relationships with students, not that it's not done innately in classes, please no, but this has meant that there are small groups of students that are with an adult, that they can call their person is ultimately the goal. In every advisory, yes, there's objectives of things that we want to do, like a MARC lesson. We just got trained, for all of our staff are completely trained in MARC, and so that they understand the curriculum and understand the point of the lessons, that even if they didn't execute it with their students, they know what the students recently were taught when it comes to the MARC bullying program. But there's always time in every advisory for for teacher choice, right? And a variety of teachers, and we give different options. But I know one teacher has brought in some old board games from home, and the kids are actually very excited. They're playing games that I haven't heard of kids playing since I was a kid, like backgammon and even just different card games, and my Nana plays this, and they'll bring it in and they'll show everyone how to do it. So it's those sort of memories and excitement that we want to see. So it does provide structure, but then it does give choice for teachers too. So that's just one example, but hoping that it's going to spur that excitement too.
I'd like to add that it is a living, breathing, adapting situation. I think this is what you're kind of leading towards, that. So the team of teachers that kind of developed this and that put the backbone in and put, the love and the care behind it, are also willing to accept and hear what they're getting, their feedback from the teachers and everything. So what you're hearing is that they're ready to make adjustments. We've already made minor adjustments here and there in an advisory because that didn't really work. We need to do that. We re-look and reframe it to what is more appropriate. Sixth graders are fun because they've never had it, so it's brand new to them, but it's what they're going to know now. So when it goes on to the next year, it's probably a little trickier for 7th and 8th graders. They like the directed study. Now there's an advisory. So it's living and breathing, and it will adjust, and we just have to keep our minds open to keep on flexing it to make it better. And as mentioned earlier, Stephen, you had a good point, like the 8th graders are different than the 6th graders, and we're bringing this out, right? But we're gonna tweak it, and it's gonna be different for the 8th graders next year. It'll be different for the 7th graders. My counselor, Ms. D, and I are looking at doing what we call the Marquee D presentation, because we're gathering information. She's doing a lot of small groups, social groups. You've got a friend and me group. So she's blending all these things together, and what we're finding is that we're going to need to take our 6th grade and break them up and do mini lessons and stuff like that. So we're learning and taking advisory and stepping it all over the place.
And that's the point of the thought of the 3 years, right? As much as, everyone's doing the same lessons right now, the incoming 6th grade would have the lessons that we've, done for a year. As a former teacher, I knew that even when I created a lesson, right, the first one was kind of, and then by the time I got to the 3rd class, I was pretty good, right? So we're taking all the lessons that we learned, but, this curriculum will only be for 6th grade next year, and then what we create over the summer will be for 7th and 8th, and then the next year, and just build upon what we learn every year.
I think this is a nice set of goals for the school for the year. When when goal setting, you're always looking for that, that intersection of like Ambition Street and Achievability Street. Like, where do we get the place that we can actually do this, but it's something that we're, actually kind of, pushing ourselves forward. This strikes me, I think, as a good place to find that intersection. And I also think that I just want to comment that there's a lot of stuff happening at the middle school, and it would be possible for some of it to get disjointed, because obviously we have the program review, then you had your entry plan last year. The school improvement plan is a required legal thing that schools have to do every year. But it's clearly all being still thought of a piece and holistically, that there are different elements of it. They're not all identical, they're not the same thing. But there's a very good sense of, thinking about through all the different pieces, the prioritization, and that there's a kind of a gelling together of the pieces and stuff. I wanted to thanks.
Thanks, Stephen. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Turner?
Thank you. One last one. So in the high school, they recently introduced grading for equity, and I was curious about, in terms of the goal 1, part of that is really the idea that the grade isn't the end point. The grade is an opportunity to then go further with the students that need to go further. And I was curious if there was some thought to extend that program down to the middle school as well. Again, another place where there could be alignment between the two, and what your guys' thoughts was on that particular topic.
The second day of our scheduling committee was all about data, and grading did come up. It is something that this year is we were focusing on the structure of the schedule and how that's going to apply. It will be something that we'll deal with in the immediate, not in the immediate future, but in the years to come for sure. It's part of the data that we gathered from that day.
Any other questions or comments?
Just if I could say thank you for your efforts
I was
here.
going to actually ask a question. I'm trying to be
Chair,
respectful
sorry,
of my colleagues. No.
Dr. Bryson.
I just have one quick question about, is it okay? Can I go? Well, this is the hard part of being that I don't know who to ask, so I guess I'll just ask you from now on. Can I go? I just was looking at communication, and you mentioned here about a quarterly, is it a quarterly newsletter?
Yes, so I'm working with the CTLs and the different departments to just have a small synopsis of what you will see coming in quarter 2, trying to get that out before parent-teacher, or right thereafter. And trying to get that for 3rd and 4th quarter. You had parent open house nights where it kind of gave you that overview maybe of the year, so that's why I didn't do it for 1st quarter, but is the goal, so shortly, I hope.
No, and so that's different from the newsletter that goes
Yes.
home, and how can, I'm just trying to, is there a specific day that goes home?
I
Or
try
emailed?
I try to do at least 2 a month, you know what I
Okay.
mean? So, no, there isn't, but, that would be part of the communication plan that maybe I need to, when I've researched and actually talked to other administrators in other districts, they've done it in different ways, so I'm still trying to mull that over, what I need to do. Surveying parents as to when it would be best. I get statistics on the s'mores, for example, of how many are read and when, right? So it's interesting to see, they're read the next day, or they're read the next night. So trying to have more consistency, but to look at the data and see what would be best, and a survey will probably be part of that as well.
Helpful. I mean, also, maybe this is more for leadership, the central office, but I think as a parent with children in multiple places, sometimes just having a consistent, because I'm constantly searching, it's like helpful if I know when. So I just wonder if that's not something that comes from central office, is like every, whatever it is, and it doesn't matter really, but every Sunday night, this is what goes out, and so you will get updates from all of the school. So that's not necessarily specific to each principal, but sort of having an overview. I think it becomes less cumbersome maybe for families who have children in multiple schools, and we know that there are so many schools.
I think that will be incorporated into one of the goals around communication, that one of my goals that you approved, and I certainly think that structure and how we're going to approach that, there's an opportunity to really carefully think about that district-wide.
Like on all things, I think things are definitely much more transparent. I'm still seeing a little bit, and this is not specific to the middle school, but where people are often still going to Facebook for information. When is this? Not when is this, but did I miss it? Did I see? And I'm just not, and so I'm just, every time I see something like that, I'm like, well, first I'm like, do I know? And then I go look, right? And then I think, I'm like, who, okay. To me, that signals we probably just need to be doing something either more consistently or just a little bit more, where people aren't like, wait, there was, I mean, then most recently there was a dance. And people are like, oh, there was a dance? Oh, was there another dance? Did I miss something? Was there a dance for 8th grade? Like,
No, there was just a dance for
There was
6th
just a
grade.
dance for 6th grade. So it was kind of like, no, there was just a dance, but there was definitely some like, not even people who were upset, but some just unknowns, confusion. And I was like, okay. So as a school committee member, I'm thinking, okay, just FYI. And I think this goes back to your role on communication, which is making sure that there's like a systematic, because very often there are things that people do know, but because maybe they haven't clicked on that particular newsletter or they haven't, we missed it, right? And so I think that can happen as well. But I was happy to see the quarterly news. I think that's going to be a great addition, so thank you for that. All right, Dr. Brandt. It's your turn.
I just wanted to thank you, and I wanted to acknowledge Mr. Ragsdale comment. It is understood, the effort here tonight is to provide a window, just a small little glimpse in terms of the many goals and priorities that Dr. Quirk and her team have established for the school community. And it may seem to some sort of looking at, there's a lot of sort of disparate pieces that may, and they may be in some regards be disparate, but they're also part of the larger whole. And there is a whole host of activity, indeed, it's true, happening at the middle school, led by Dr. Quirk and Mr. Faircloth and her team and the middle school staff. And they are working, so many of them, incredibly hard to try and embrace, whether it be advisory, this scheduling work that we've got going on, and there's a long, long list of others. Certainly kudos to them and the middle school staff who are not here tonight for collective efforts. One of the things that you'll recall back to the elementary presentations of whatever that was, we had the whole group here at the table for different reasons. Maybe that didn't seem to hold true, but I wanted to just point out that we're going to shift to the high school in just a second. The level of collaboration that is ongoing between Dr. Quirk and Mr. Gendron is really quite incredible, and it may not play itself out exactly here in the presentation to come in a moment, but for the committee and for the community to know that they are working very closely together, and we see that. So thanks so much for your efforts tonight. Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the 6th grade dance really was great. I didn't go, but my kid did.
Let's do 7.
I almost didn't see you dressed like Waldo out like
Thank you.
Good evening. Welcome to our school committee meeting.
Awesome. Good evening, everyone. My name's Ryan Jenner. I'm the proud principal of Wilmington High School. Year's off to a great start, as you heard from Audrey and Maddie earlier tonight, and I've enjoyed getting to know the members of the school community. Tonight I'll be presenting the school improvement plan. I'm also joined by Mark Staffier, who I don't believe has been formally introduced to the school committee. In late August, in an unusual circumstance, we had a need to fill our assistant principal position. And we were very fortunate that Mark was interested. Mark has been at Wilmington High School for 23 years as an educator, as a teacher, as a coach, as the social studies CTL. And to have such a unique situation result in such a seamless transition has been really to the benefit of the school and the students and the staff. So I wanted to introduce Mark and also thank Mark for all the work he's done thus far.
On that behalf, I'd like to say thank you, and kind of joined a great team, a great supportive team with both Mr. Gendron and Mr. Miranda, and I look forward to continuing to support our great students and staff in my new role, and continue my years here in Wilmington. So thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Okay. So before we look at the actions in the school improvement plan, I wanted to review the timeline of how we got here. Last year, NEAS conducted a site visit at WHS as part of the accreditation process. There was a typo on the packet, so that was 2021, and I apologize
I was like, again?
for the confusion.
Stop it.
I was like, did that just happen? What's happening?
Yeah. So during that visit, the visiting team identified strengths as well as opportunities for growth and provided targeted recommendations for next steps at WHS. In the spring of 2022, then Principal Ms. Peters wrote this school improvement plan with 7 goals in alignment with the 7 recommendations of that visiting team. This summer and fall, that school improvement plan was very helpful for me in creating continuity of school improvement and helping me as a new principal focus my attention on high priority improvement goals. So thank you, Ms. Peters. The goals and actions you're reviewing in the packet that I'll present tonight are those that were written last spring. Given the time and perspective and relevance to the NEASC report, I felt it was most appropriate to keep the goals and actions intact. The format was written in alignment to the NEASC report, so I reorganized them under the 3 district strategic objectives here. In the future, the goals and actions will be drafted in alignment with those objectives. And after discussing the formal goals and actions, I'll also highlight additional work that's relevant to each strategic objective, but not formalized in the improvement plan. So with the first district strategic objective, number 1 around student learning, the WHS goal outlines ongoing efforts to create comprehensive curriculum maps for all courses. Stage 1 of curriculum mapping is mostly complete, outlining the desired results for our core academic courses. This goal focuses on expanding curriculum mapping for Stage 2 assessment and Stage 3 instructional strategies. This important work will help build consistency in our curriculum, improve our assessment tools, and identify best practices for teaching and learning. Each of the initiatives listed here were written as individual goals corresponding to the recommendations of NEASC. Work on 3 of these initiatives is already underway. We're making immediate progress on implementing active learning strategies, the curriculum mapping work I just discussed, and a review of our current bell schedule. Our work on grading practices began years ago through teacher-led professional development sessions. Someone mentioned grading for equity. And will expand to department and full school policy reviews. Formalizing staff collaboration time is one of the priorities of that schedule review initiative, and the work of that committee will inform our next steps for that action. District strategic objective number 2 was social emotional learning. There are 3 initiatives connected to this one. First, the WHS counseling team led by CTL Molly Dickerson will continue to develop the scope and sequence of the curriculum for the school counseling seminars. The counselors meet with students in full grade and small group assemblies to conduct seminars focused on one of 3 targeted focuses: academic, personal, or college and career readiness. The second action refers to the counseling team's plan to gather general data on frequency and types of visits. And finally, the IST process refers to a team meeting that occurs to build support plans for students who continue to struggle after other interventions have proven unsuccessful. And although not formalized in the plan, there's also valuable work happening to create a clear MTSS map for the high school. MTSS means multi-tiered systems of support, and the map will outline our Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 interventions. Tier 1 interventions are intended for all students. Tier 2 interventions are strategic supports delivered in small groups, and Tier 3 interventions are more significant supports for individual students. The MARC Bullying Prevention Program, which we're rolling out this year in alignment with district initiatives, is an example of a Tier 1 intervention we're adding this year. Other existing sources of information like Youth Risk Behavior Survey and other screening processes are also part of this goal. For District Strategic Objective 3, Culture of Inclusion, the goal describes fostering an inclusive culture in several ways. The first 2 actions in the plan involve expansion of the WHS vision of the graduate. The vision of the graduate helps promote a culture of inclusion by highlighting the ways we expect all students to engage in the WHS learning community. In year 1, students, staff, and families came together to identify 5 mindsets that exemplify what we expect to develop in every graduate of WHS. Whereas year 1 involved teaching students about the mindset, we're now in year 2, which involves developing a portfolio process in which students identify assignments, achievements, experiences, and other ways that they demonstrate these mindsets in action. The Senior Exploration Project for seniors is an internship-based learning experience that allows students to apply what they've learned in a real-world setting. The vision of the graduate mindsets will also be embedded in the culminating assessment for senior exploration, and students will document the ways that they demonstrated those mindsets in action. In addition to these formal actions in the plan, there are 3 other important ways we're working towards this goal. First, we've aligned the vision of the graduate mindsets with our Student of the Month recognition, encouraging staff to nominate and celebrate a wider range of student accomplishments. Second, each week I send out a student and family update, which is organized with headlines, important updates, good news, and upcoming events for our school community to hear about. To date, 878 unique viewers have accessed the document, and stakeholders have started sending even more good news to publicize. Finally, I've been fortunate to partner with a group of highly invested parents who have made rapid progress in reinstating the WHS Parent Advisory Council, or PAC, to help support our efforts to provide an extra layer of support and another avenue of collaboration between families and the WHS school community. And it goes without saying that the School Advisory Council, the SAC, which consists of 2 students, 2 staff, and 5 parents, have been instrumental in my onboarding as a school principal and support with the school improvement plan. And although it's late, I snuck in, speaking of good news, some fall highlights that, if time permits, I'll briefly reference. Going across the top row, that's actually over the summer. That's the 9th grade orientation, when the peer mentors take time out of their summer to come welcome the incoming 9th graders with tours and slush. The homecoming event was regarded as a success. Over half the school came. There was dancing, there was food, there was dessert, photo area.
Slush?
No slush. Cookies from Munchies, the big ones. That's what they like. The top right is actually from yesterday. That was the 8th grade visit. With the partnership of the middle school and Dr. Quirk, we bussed over 180 plus middle schoolers, and the 8th grade teachers were hugely helpful as well. They toured the building, heard about what's happening in the learning spaces where it's happening. We had an activity fair and a full group assembly. Bottom left, I think that was my first Friday night lights at WHS. It was awesome to see so much of the community turn out, to see the students cheering on classmates, and of course, the best band in the land. Bottom middle, that's interim athletic director, Mr. Dennis Ingram, at the first meeting of the captain council. So he's putting together curriculum for our team captains to build capacity and opportunities for student leadership. And bottom right is Puffs. I didn't take that photo. I know they made a big announcement about not taking photos. That's not sure where it came from, but I hope you got the chance to see it. It was an awesome production. The performers were great. The set was great. The technical effects were awesome. A really fun night. Looking forward to School of Rock in the spring. And at the top is some Roll Cats evidence. So when I was first hired, we did principal roundtables, and a student, when I was asking about WHS traditions I should know about, mentioned sometimes people say Roll Cats. Well, with some not so gentle nudging, Roll Cats has been happening a lot. And I've been pleased to see the students run with it. Students are making posters, I can see one from here, flyers, announcements. It's really become kind of a fun school spirit thing. So, Roll Cats. So, a lot to say, a lot to be excited about. I'm grateful for the partnerships, really, in this first quarter with students, staff, families. I'm excited to see school in full swing. We have a lot of important work to do to bring WHS to the full potential, but I'm confident we have the people, the resources, and the energy to work through it. So with that, happy to elaborate or answer any questions.
Great, thank you so much. Questions, comments? Burns?
Thank you. So I don't know where I was looking. I'm trying to look out where I formulated my questions, and I kind of can't find the spots. I think in the goal to the SEL piece under the actions, it discussed about a referral process, about capturing. And tiers, almost tiers of intervention with referrals to capturing kids who may be struggling more. I didn't know if, I know this is this high school's goals, but I didn't know if there was a pathway for parents who may be noticing some unusual behavior at home in that goal area. I think there was a component of creating new referrals.
Yeah.
And whatnot. I just didn't know if there was a segue for parents in that realm with what you're trying to implement internally.
That's a great question. So that was objective 2, and I think it's that third point, the IST process. So IST process, what that really means is when students are really struggling, like you described, and the other avenues of support haven't worked, this is like a really big formal team meeting that occurs. If a parent's concerned, typically that concern gets brought to a counselor or a teacher, and they'll try other interventions even before this.
Right.
We're working on taking the district curriculum accommodation plan, the DCAP, and it has accommodations that are available to all students without an ed plan or anything like that.
Just needs to be implemented.
Trying to put that into action first. So actually, the referral form asks for examples of interventions that have been tried but haven't worked.
Okay.
To really try to hone in on the problem solving.
So this referral form would be a part of the DCAP then?
It would come after we've tried the DCAP strategy.
Okay, because I know the DCAP also has a referral form, is like a process as well.
Yeah.
So is it complicated? I mean, if you're creating a referral form for the DCAP piece, would that be like a secondary, like a totally independent referral? Because it should really segue into it, you know what I mean? It's not like you've recognized that there's struggle, whether it be academically, whether it be mentally, whether it be emotionally, socially. You've already identified that in order to implement the DCAP. So I'm just trying to, what would another referral on something that you have a foundation of which attempted aspects, recommendations from DCAP, what would another referral, I'm just trying to understand what the next tier in that step would be.
Yeah, really, the referral typically comes from the team that's working on implementing those DCAP interventions. So a student is, let's say, we were talking about reading, struggling with reading, and some of the classroom-based interventions aren't working. Maybe even a tier 2 intervention where during W2 they get extra time with a reading specialist. Still it hasn't worked. That student's teacher or that intervention team might say to the IST team, look, we're at that point where we've tried a lot of other interventions and we need to bring the whole team together to really review it. So it's not like a separate action that's required. It really does kind of roll from one tier of intervention to the next.
All right,
So
I just didn't know if it was like a separate referral piece, and maybe that was just me processing, but it just looked like it was a separate entity, if you know what I mean.
But I think we look at it internally a lot, so it's helpful to think about looking at it from the lens of a parent to make sure that it's easy to understand, easy to access, and so that's helpful feedback.
Because that would be like just a segue from the DCAP beyond, because there's other services, possible special ed evaluation, assessments to be considered, so I wasn't just trying to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's helpful. Thanks.
Mrs. Plowman?
Love your energy. And really happy to see, as a really concrete goal, adopting a formalized system to track students who access counseling services. I would love to see the whole district using a similar process that just follows. I mean, I think I've said this at some other point, but I know it will require resources to have some sort of a database where even when a student goes from 5th grade to 6th grade, 8th grade to 9th grade, that we can see what that history is around what their mental health needs have been throughout their entire educational experience. And we can just be more mindful, have supports in place and ready to go. And it's true in any district, I think, that when a student goes from one building to the next building, it's really hard to track that. So I'm happy that you are embarking with the counseling team to really look at that and think about what's the system that we're using to track kids in this way with regard to counseling services. So I'm really happy about that, and I would love to, at some point, hear an update. I'm not even sure what the current processes are, but it's obviously a particular interest for me, so I'm glad that's on there.
Yeah, awesome. Ms. Dickerson, I asked for an update of how that's going prior to the meeting. She said they have really clear data and a really clear process for scheduled appointments, and so now they're working on kind of the drop-in appointments or on-demand appointments, which are a little trickier to document.
Yep.
But that's kind of the next chapter in that goal.
Perfect.
Questions or comments, Mr. Ragsdale?
First wanted to say how happy I was that when we had that vacancy in the assistant principalship at the beginning of the year that you were able to step into that. And after that announcement was made, then I was feeling good about the year starting off on the right foot. And sorry to lose you as the CTL, but I think you were needed elsewhere at the time. So, but welcome to that position and thank you. In the first objective, is a comment about reviewing the grading practices and also schedule review. And I was wondering if either of you could speak to kind of what specifically you're looking at, what aspects of grading and the schedule that you're looking to review and potentially address.
Sure. So I'll talk grading first. I think the visiting team was pleased by all the work that had happened to date with Grading for Equity, especially that it was kind of a teacher-led initiative to really focus in on assessment practices and how it impacts students. Growing that learning, I think, to a full department and a full building is part of the work that has to be done. And so we're working on kind of the transition away from kind of voluntary professional development opportunities to something that becomes part of our school culture. I know students have voiced that just by their schedule, they might have some teachers who are implementing Grading for Equity strategies and others who aren't. And the discrepancies or lack of consistency can be problematic. So I think that's kind of the next conversation for us to have as a school. For schedule review, it was interesting hearing some of the takeaways from the middle school priorities because a lot of those are part of the high school schedule. The high school schedule has had that flex time for a number of years. I think they were probably pretty early on implementing that. And so the NEAS recommendations aren't around radical changes or alleging that they're needed, but maybe to Dr. Brand's point, continually refining, reviewing, and tinkering with opportunities to make it better. Coincidentally, Mr. Staffier is leading that work with some staff members. I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
No, it's just early on in the process at the high school level right now, and we're working and looking at those priorities for the students and what's working and kind of analyzing what needs to be fixed. And we oftentimes, I think Dr. Brand even talked about, we're not blowing up the schedule per se. We're looking at the existing system and seeing, what's working well and what we have to fine tune some more. But we are early in that stage right now.
Good, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Mine was asked and answered, thank you. Well, it's covered by others, so I don't need to.
I'll just put a plug in for, as a parent of a junior, we love the W-2. So I know that I don't think it's going anywhere, and it's maybe in its total time, but it is, I think when I compare sort of the students' health and well-being, I think that W-2 plays a pretty large role in managing, especially when so many of them go right from the end of the day to their whatever after-school activities, and so providing that space. When I just love when they talk about, oh, I was able to go see so-and-so, and I was able to go talk about this revision, and I just feel like it's such a great way to build that community within the school. So I'll just put that out there. And then the other thing I wanted to say was it's the middle school's been doing it as long as, I mean, I've had students in middle school kind of being out there in the morning and saying hi. But it is such a, I mean, I don't think I'll be dropping off too much longer, but it is, well, I will, because I will next year. It's a joy to see you out there in the morning. And I think it's such a, like a simple thing, but I think it does make, people have commented to me about that many times. Have you seen the principal out, the assistant principal? I'm like, I know. So it's really just a nice wave, and I know you say hi to all the kids, and I think it's just such a great way to make them feel seen and build that community. So not everyone gets to do that, I'm sure, because they don't all drop their kids off, but it's nice. My question is, where is the actual drop-off? Now, I am a front door. I believe it's the front door, Mr. Gendron. So I wait, even if there's a space for the back, I go to the front. Now, what is it you would like? Because now is your chance, because I feel like there's a little bit of frustration out there.
So
What is it
I
the
recall
two of
you
you
said
would like?
something about evolving practices, right? The goal is to pull all the way up.
That's what I thought.
You know, we want everyone to be safe, and so sometimes when there's two drop-off zones and people are trying to pull back into the moving lane,
Yeah.
it can be problematic. So pulling all the way up as far as the tennis courts,
To the
if
front
one is
door.
so bold, yep.
That's what I thought.
That would be great.
My daughter, every morning she hears me, I'm like, I just don't understand. I thought maybe a sign would help. Pull up. I don't know. I have suggestions, but no. I just thought here in this place, we could just, we'd say it out loud so that
Yep.
everyone was on the same, not that
Jen
everyone's
Bryson
watching.
Park here, just for you.
I pull all the way up, but anyway. But I just wanted to, I was actually curious, because I said, well, maybe there is, because there's actually been some debates about this. Well, no, actually, if there is plenty of room back by that, that does make good sense, because of the flow of traffic. And I said, well, that's interesting. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that, since I don't get to actually talk with you in the morning. So. All right, anything else, Dr.
Actually, I
Brand?
do two comments. One, something weird is going on here. I think it was maybe in the second or third week that students are already baking for Mr. Gendron and delivering food to him. So there is a vibe with the students, and it is palpable when you walk around this school. That I can tell you. It is great. And I may know the guy who took the picture of the play, but I know that permission was asked. So I'm just saying. All right. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks so much
Thank
for
you all.
being here.
Very
Thank
much
you
for
very
coming.
much. We appreciate it.
Roll cats.
All
Yeah.
right.
Do we end our meetings with that from now on? Roll call.
Better trademark this.
You're gonna have to do the Pledge of Allegiance.
So, my friends, it is 9, I can't even see anymore, it's 9:20. We have, we have the MCAS report, and that is, it's pretty lengthy, but I think we do have next week, so I would never suggest waiting until next week, but we do have next week, so I just wanted your thoughts on that. I'm happy to go full steam ahead, but I just want to be thoughtful about where we are in the evening.
I would like to make a motion to postpone the MCAS discussion until the November 16th meeting.
Is there a second?
Oh, second.
Is there a discussion?
Well, only question I have is, I know there's a lot that we already are thinking about for that meeting and even the ones into December. Is there enough time because it is a big topic and we do have a lot to potential discussion on that one. Is there enough time in that meeting?
It actually, if I may.
Sure.
It
Yeah,
actually, yes, it
Pretty
is.
light.
It's a perfect agenda, so.
It's pretty light, but I know that people in the community have been waiting for this, so I also, I'm sort of I'm not exactly sure what I want to do here, but I just wanted to put it out to you.
I'm worried that, given the hour, that we may not really dive into that in a way that we had intended to. I know we sort of touched on a few things earlier, but I would be okay with waiting, just so that we're not rushing through it. I don't want to do that.
And that
Would
was-
it be something that we could, excuse me,
No, go.
No, I don't know.
Who's recognized?
MJ. I was looking at MJ.
it's that bewitching hour where parliamentary procedure goes out the window. I just would like to, because it's so comprehensive, I would ask, because I know you really truly drive the agenda, if it would be possible to have it at the beginning of the session so we can really, dive into it. And it's not a bad idea to give it one more week just to crunch on it.
Okay.
And just,
Yeah.
All right, and Jesse? Oh, sorry, Mr. Ragsdale, go ahead.
Please, your hand was
Go
up
ahead.
first.
Just very quickly, that I have the same thought, which is that we'll be able to get more into it if it's fresh and we jump into it at the beginning of a meeting rather than starting to talk about it at 9:30 p.m.
Jesse?
My only question would be, and no disrespect to anybody else, but will Miss Elliott be here? Because I think that's your presentation, right? So as long as...
I was like, wait, is she not going to talk about what's happening?
No, I don't want to skip doing the MCAS presentation
the
if the
lottery?
presenter might not be
she's
here.
not
The
going to the
vacation plans
Bahamas?
next week that you only told Jesse
So
about?
as long as we go slow in the discussion, because I'm taking minutes
To
next.
be, to be transparent, about 45 minutes ago, Glenn sent me a note that said, do you want to postpone? It's okay with Christine. And then I said, no, we're good. And then I said to David, and David goes, no, we're good. And then David wrote me a little message like 35 minutes later, and he said, maybe we should postpone MCAS. So that's what we do up here. It's like passing notes in class. Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Everyone in favor of postponing MCAS until the 16th? Okay, that's unanimous. Sorry, Christine. I know you worked super hard to pull that together because we really did want that to be in this meeting, so I apologize. And then that brings us finally to the MSBA updates and the Wildwood short-term updates.
Sure. I mean, I'm not sure. I'm happy to take questions. In the interest of time, I think that I tried to capture most everything that is going on these two different tracks for the for the Wildwood. Sorry. So I hope it speaks for itself. There is a lot going on, and has been relative to both the MSBA aspect of the Wildwood, and I tried to capture most of that here. We will be talking more about the short-term solution in the very near future. Activity is ongoing, but there's nothing specifically new on that front to share tonight. So with that, and if there are questions, happy to take any, but otherwise.
Okay. Questions or comments? So that's the memo. It has the update, and then toward the bottom, the Wildwood short-term solution. Any questions for David?
Not a question, but I just want to say that with the selection of an OPM, things are really going to start moving on this project. And this is where community involvement is going to be a big part of it as well, because this is where we really start to just nail down a lot of the details and design and the scope of what it is that we're doing here. So, so far, this has kind of just been feels like all we've been doing is kind of checking boxes and submitting information and, hitting certain milestones and deadlines. But it's like now the work really begins in earnest.
I think it's a great, if I may, I think that's an excellent point, and thank you for, a lot of this work has been happening sort of behind the scenes. Come the 1st of December, which is hard to believe, but not that far off, it will be official through the MSBA partnership that we will have an agreement in place with an owner's project manager, and at that point in time, and over the span of the next really 24 or so months, there will be an awful lot of activity that will be front and center with the community, and really a level of engagement that has not happened thus far with the Wildwood in terms of community engagement, staff engagement and involvement, in terms of helping chart the course for where this project will go and what this building will look like literally and physically going forward for many years to come for this community. So, a great point. Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa?
I think it might be helpful just for people watching in the community that haven't looked at this memo, for you, Dr. Brand, to maybe just give a brief sort of update on where are we at with a short-term solution, because I think that is the most pressing aspect of the Wildwood right now for the community.
Sure. Be happy to, and thank you. So we met with the Wildwood Building Committee met, I have to check the dates itself, on October 25th. And really at that meeting was centered around better understanding the one option that really, for all intents and purposes, I would suggest was emerging as a possibility based upon finances, and that was a modest, if you will, renovation of the Wildwood School. Modest might not be the right term, but minimal renovation. The consultant that we have engaged in this, the Doran Whittier, had been working very hard in the background with the not the inspector, the building building inspector, I'm sorry, to best understand what scope of work would be done at the Wildwood, and based upon the codes and so on, what scope of work would also need to be done to meet code. Anyway, the long story short there is it is clear that even a minor renovation, small-scale renovation of the Wildwood would creep up to around $6 million in costs. An awful lot of money for a very short period of time, arguably speaking. And so in the interest of the community, recognizing that, well, no one has said, no, we shouldn't move forward with that option, or quite honestly, any of the other options. The scope of money that we're talking about for all of these, as we've talked about before, projects is just really quite incredible. My request to the Wildwood Building Committee was to allow a little bit more time for my team to go back and review an option that we really hadn't explored carefully or thoroughly, and that's at the middle school right now, and that's what we're doing. And that comes about based upon the analysis that the consultant did in terms of the space and the capacity that, at least on paper, the middle school has. So where we left things was that we would, that time allowance would be had. We're in the process of that right now. And the Wildwood Building Committee will be coming back after Thanksgiving to hear an update on what that looks like. It remains, it's an adjusted timeline. You as a school committee won't have sort of a final recommendation from the Wildwood Building Committee here at this period of time, but that'll be pushed off until the 1st of December. So that's where we're at right now.
If I could just add a piece to that, not only the dollar amount, the cost of doing that, but the time to completion too, had to come into play, because even that modest renovation could be a year and a half.
Thank you.
To put in place, so that was a consideration as well.
Thank you for that reminder.
Mrs. Plowman.
And I'll just add to that, I think other considerations were really trying to hold in mind a lot of that feedback from the staff and looking at options that felt like it was checking off all those boxes, a financially responsible decision, factoring time for completion, factoring staff's concerns and needs as they've experienced, operation as they are currently. So there's a big learning curve that's happened, that we now understand a bit better what those experiences are like and what would make their functioning, this temporary situation, more conducive to the needs of the children, to the needs of themselves as staff people. So I was happy to hear that, wait a second, there may be another option here. Just for clarification for the community, there's been, some chatter and question about, wait, does this mean we're reconfiguring the district? And the short answer to that, and correct me, anyone else, if I am understanding this incorrectly, but the short answer to that is no, not right now.
That's right.
This is, everything will remain in place at the middle school as it currently is, but looking at utilization of space a little bit differently. And one other possibility in terms of thinking about the middle school being part of this solution is that the West would also continue to be part of that solution potentially as well. So I hope I captured that.
You did, and
Okay.
thank you. Yes, and the grade reconfiguration, also thank you for raising it. It's the hour's late too, so sorry. But you're right, and I think maybe it's been said here before, but it is worth saying, I absolutely 100% believe that we will and have to address or explore grade reconfiguration possibilities once we have the owner's project manager on board with the Wildwood project and are looking at what the future landscape should look like or could look like in the district. And that will include, consideration of grade reconfiguration. But should that be an avenue that we're going to pursue, that would be part and parcel with a new building project that would be, the 5, 6, whatever we're at, months out,
Right.
or years out, sorry.
Yep.
Thank you.
Can I go? And then I just, because it's on my mind, I'll forget. Just one thing to add, and I don't know, Mr. Turner, if you want to chime in on this, but this has been so much about building space, where are we putting, but I also wonder if we don't want to revisit the importance of early childhood, what's happening, why this is such an important piece, why we're really trying to make sure that we're providing adequate space for that age group. I just want to, I think it's one thing for all of us who sit around this table or educators to understand the value and what we mean when we're saying this is important to provide spaces that are really important and meaningful and adequate for our youngest learners as far as many, many reasons: early literacy, adequate time for play, access to outdoor space. There's so many pieces, and I just feel like I know we know that, but I think we need to bring that back just so that everyone's on board and understanding why it is so very important for us to be making these decisions. So I think it might be a good time with that update to also pull in, this is what we mean when we say early ed, and this is what it looks like, and these are the sorts of things that are and I know we have that ready to go, but I think we need to bring it back so the public can see it. Do you want to add anything to that?
Now or at a future?
In a future, but anything that I've just missed?
No, but I think that's very, very important, just to understand where those buildings and the education that's provided in those fit into the overall flow from pre-K, especially K through 12 is part of a continuum of learning, and how that building is currently being housed through the district does really impact those students and where they start to flow through their educational experience with us. But there's a lot to that point for sure.
All right, David, and then did you have your hand up for something else?
I have a specific comment, yeah.
Okay.
Different than that.
And just putting on top of that this is why, among other things, it's not so simple to just saying like, oh, are there a bunch of empty classrooms at the middle school that we can throw kids in? Because the middle school is made for 6th through 8th graders, and we're talking about preschoolers and kindergartners. And even when we were just looking, several of us, have toured the Wildwood programs in the buildings, and even in the elementary schools, there are some issues with sizing, and certainly at the intermediate schools at the West, there are issues of, well, they're just, everything from the furniture to the sinks to the bathrooms are not sized appropriately for kids of that age. And so it's, you really have to, it goes a lot deeper than you might initially think, that just like, oh, isn't it just an open space and we can just throw a bunch of kids in there and do an early childhood program. And it's much more complicated than that, and that's one of the things, of course, we're looking at. What kind of changes would be needed to make to that middle school space in order to see if it can appropriately house these programs.
If I may, I so wish that we could get the entire community to have the ability to walk through our 7 operating schools now, because I can imagine, and I've heard some of this, the assumption our enrollment is declining, we must have ample space here and there. The fact of the matter is that every single classroom space in this district, in all 7 schools, every single space is used right now. And it may not be for a full class, it may be for an English language learning class, it may be for a special education class, it may be for a speech and language class. Every single instructional space, every room. And so that is to say that even as we're exploring the middle school, there absolutely are impacts here if we're going down any path. It's not just a case of capturing empty classrooms. I just want to, for the record and for the community, stress, we do not have a single empty classroom in this district. And that is a function of the age of 6 elementary schools built in the 50s that simply do not conform to what a modern facility looks like and needs to provide in terms of space right now. And it's just, it goes hand in hand. It's not unique to Wilmington, it's unique, but it's I think, an important piece, because I can imagine some might be thinking that there's all this kinds of, there's not. There's just not.
And that actually goes directly to where I was going to. The tour we did, there's displaced things at all the 3 current host schools now that aren't happening in the way they should have, or the way they were at least. And so the curiosity I'd have about option 17 is we would be displacing things that, definitely, at the middle school as well. So how do we accommodate those things in a fair and equitable way to the middle schoolers? Mm-hmm. And so how do you, it may end up being that it comes to a similar sort of answer with option 17, which would be interesting for sure. But there, I would want to make sure we're not going to impact the middle school negatively for 5 years and still not have quite what we need for the Wildwood children as well. So, it's for sure the concern.
Yeah, I'm sort of thinking about this too in big pictures and thinking about the sort of the main Wildwood project, and it goes a little bit to what Dr. Brand was just saying. When I look at the timeline for this, we're looking at, before a school is built, we're looking at 5 or 6 years from January, right? So we're looking at 2028, 2029, something like that. And when you look at the age of our other buildings, right now we're saying the Wildwood is in such a horrible state of affairs. The Wildwood was built in 1955. The Boutwell was built in 61, which is within the 6 years. So if we're saying how bad Wildwood is now, in 6 years when this new school, the new Wildwood is built, the Boutwell is going to be in the situation. The North Intermediate is 1962, the Woburn Street is 63, and the West is 64. So we're going to be coming up on a real problem with our aging buildings. And I think it's important that people do see these spaces and understand that, we can complain about the Wildwood and it's not in a good state. But like all of our schools are quickly falling into that. And from what we've been talking about with this MSBA stuff is we can have one MSBA project in the works at a time. And that process is like 7, 8 years kind of, right? So, we could say, all right, we can get the Wildwood done and then we luck out and we get in for the Boutwell, but we also have 3 other buildings that are quickly going to be in that same shape. And so I think that we need really, it's the town, I think, more so. We have to do some real thinking about this. And when we think about in the feasibility study, this grade reconfiguration stuff is taking some of that stuff into account so that maybe perhaps with the Wildwood, grade reconfiguration that we can address, the Woburn Street or the North. And, maybe we can get something going with the Boutwell and that can include the West, it's all of that stuff. So I'm just thinking big picture stuff here, and there's a lot of real big, tough decisions coming down the pike here.
Because of exactly what Jay just said, as we develop this current MSBA project that we're in, and we're thinking about what kind of school we're going to build, I think at the same time, we absolutely have to be thinking about and planning for what comes after that. Because one school is not, we're not going to make some mega gigantic school that just allows us to consolidate 6 elementary schools into one building. And so we're going to run into this problem in some degree at some point. And given the kind of time horizon that these types of projects take, it's sort of a failure to have thought, 7 years in advance that kind of put us in the position where we're in now. And so we have to be looking not just to this one project, but we have to be looking to what comes after that and sort of planning it also with a mind of, we don't know exactly what we'll be able to do in the future, but we need to be thinking about it now and not only starting to think about it after we finally have this next building.
Jay? I certainly agree, but I think this is the opportunity to look at our schools and plan for consolidation, because as long as I've sat on this board, we talked about the transition from 3rd grade to 4th grade on both sides of town with the schools, and about how there's too many transitions. And so we really, as difficult as this is, and knowing what our future is, this truly is an opportunity for us to be able to target that long issue with transitions amongst multiple schools. And as I learned last week, I should say, in just conversations with colleagues, that actually I think it was a workshop, that building projects are not going to get cheaper. If we don't start proceeding with them now it's only going to be more inflated with each passing year. And so ever more so that I don't know what the answer is, and I don't know what the pathway to that answer is. But I think that end goal has to be taking this opportunity and seeing how we can consolidate our schools and create better learning environments with minimal transition among schools. I mean, I don't know what the outcome, and maybe I'm a little too idealistic, but I think if we miss this opportunity, it's never going to happen. I don't see it happening if we don't take this by the reins and.
Thank you. And I'll just take this, just again, thank everyone for all the work they're doing. This has been an incredible couple of months, so I know many of you are, or many of all of us in some way are at a meeting feels like almost every night. So just around. So thank you for your volunteerism and your sense of service. We do appreciate it. And I think that I go back to, thank goodness, Dr. Brand kept saying, have you seen the wildlife? Have you seen the wildlife? Jen, have you seen the wildlife? Like, I think we forget, like, we're in this moment, but you have to kind of go back and say, oh my goodness, like, thank good. So I know it feels very overwhelming and stressful, but I feel like we're in a good place in some ways, right? Because we've done what we needed to do, and by submitting all of those SOIs, like we're in a better place now than we were a few years ago, and people are putting the work in around this table and in this town to make sure that we can do this work. And I think you're absolutely right about having our forecast, like, okay, what's next? I think that's a great place for us as a committee to push forward in this work. So I'm going to end on a positive note. Is there anything else? Okay. Subcommittee reports. We'll hold on ours till next week, our EDI report. Any other?
The WEF board met last night and had a great report with regard to the outcome of the WEF walk. And actually, they have a new Instagram page that I would love to encourage people to follow. And I don't know why, I think it's Wilmington WEF or WEF.
Jesse's ready. Jesse's like, give it to me.
I'm sorry, I can't access that part of my
I bet
brain.
I can find it and share the link.
But everything,
Google.
pictures from the WEF walk, I think they raised approximately $8,500.
Wow.
Great.
Fantastic.
Amazing, right?
That is amazing.
So they're very hard at work and always looking for people to join the board. The CPAC met last Thursday and did a presentation, and I believe the slide deck and some audio voiceover will be made available on the website. That's called Who's Who in Special Education. It just kind of gives an overview of any new administrators and programs in town so that families can better understand what's going on in the world of special education here. And so I would encourage people to check the website for that, and they're always welcome to new members as well. So December 17th, I believe, is their next meeting. And that's all really from me.
Did you find
And
it?
the Instagram account is Wilmington WEF, all one word.
Thank you
Thank you, Jesse.
very much.
We're going to have a lot of new followers tonight.
I lied, it's December 15th is the next CPAC meeting.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Melissa. Correspondence?
None this evening.
Okay. Some future school committee dates. We have November 16th is next Wednesday. We'll be here again. We do have an executive session, so it doesn't, I don't think it says it right. We do have an executive session at 6 o'clock. Oh, sorry. So 6 o'clock next week, so put it in your calendars. November 19th is the special town meeting, and December 7th is our regular session meeting here in this room. And I think that's it. I just want to see if the family community subcommittee can just meet, coordinate calendars, because it looks like we didn't have one single time in common to meet with pause. So I wanted to just, if we could come up with a couple of times to share with them before we go our separate ways, that would be great. And I think that's it, unless anyone else has anything else.
Other than I need to talk to Dave and Jay too before we leave, I know.
Okay. All right, perfect. So is there a motion? Mr. Fennelly, a second. Mrs. Burns, all in favor? All right, thank you very much. Good night.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.